Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Athletic Greens. If you're looking for an easier way to take supplements, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs of AG1 with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/sacred. That's athleticgreens.com/SACRED to begin your AG1 journey. Again, go to athleticgreens.com/sacred today. That's athleticgreens.com/sacred. Check it out. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by BetterHelp. My friends, discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/symbols today. That's BETTERHELP.com/SYMBOLS to get 10% off your first month of sessions. That's betterhelp.com/symbols for modern, affordable online therapy tailor-made for you. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 244. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined once again by my son, Chris Reagan. Chris, welcome back to the show, my friend. You didn't quit. How are you today?
No, I'm back. I thought I was fired after the presentation that we did in Texas. But
yeah, don't give it away.
Spoilers.
Don't give it away.
Yeah. I won't give it away. Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
That was almost firing. You were almost fired for multiple reasons, really, because you were coming in hot to Texas. You were in Texas for about 5.5 minutes, and then you
I had to leave,
and then you left, and but you weren't here last week for the show. And no matter, first of all, it was funny because we didn't even acknowledge that you weren't here for 10 minutes. I don't know why I didn't say anything for a long time. We were, and if we kept going, I probably just would have never said anything, and then people would have had even deeper questions. But
I think
I explained on the show that you had a boxing thing to do, but everyone thought you were quitting the show.
No. It's something, sometimes, well, last week specifically, because of the Texas trip, we had to record a day earlier than normal.
Right. Exactly.
And that day is just, that time specifically is all, that's the time of day that I'm getting beat the fuck up.
Yeah.
Right. And you were there the week before, but the week before that, you had that special group training stream.
Yeah.
So it's it was one of those things. I saw a lot of comments and I almost wanted to say something, but I thought we would just discuss it. There was two circumstances. One that was a pre-planned special thing, and then we recorded on a totally different day.
Look, the reality is until this fight, my schedule is going to be really weird and really annoying. But after, it'll be back to normal and it'll be back to flexible and normal. But right now it's crazy. So apologies if I miss at some point in the near future, but I'm trying not to die,
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm personally not worried about it. Yeah, it seems like the audience is worried a little bit more worried about it, but fear not, my friends.
Yeah, fret not.
We're here. Fear not. Dustin Furman, executive producer, wearing your Bucky shirt. How are you today, my friend?
That's right. Boosies. I got the Bussy shirt on, and I feel pretty good today. I had the same thing happen to me a few weeks ago, where last night felt like I was dying. I had a horrible migraine, stomach was all messed up. Went to bed, woke up, and I felt like $1 million. Just nice. Fantastic. And I'm really excited for today's show. Really excited because I'm really excited to talk about PSVR 2. It's got me amped up.
That's interesting. We'll get to that.
It's been a good time.
We'll certainly get to that. But we had a good time down in Texas. We'll get to that momentarily as well. Welcome all to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Like I said, episode 244. We go up each and every week. You know who doesn't ever miss an episode? Me. I've never missed an episode of Sacred Symbols. How is that possible?
But will you? You're getting married, Colin.
I am getting married, and we talked in the past that the show will live on even if I die. They'll just have to be renamed, and someone else will have to take it over. But it'll go. It'll keep marching on. The PlayStation news and analyses keep marching on, regardless of my status. I'm saying every word a little bit off. For some reason, I don't know why I'm doing that. Status.
I don't like it. I don't like what you're doing here.
Yeah, I'm getting a little British. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. But thank you all out there for being with us. You can get our show 3 days early and ad-free over on Patreon. Patreon.com/laststandmedia, like more than 12,000 of you do. We couldn't do it without you. The biggest video games podcast related Patreon in history by far. So we appreciate you. Thank you for that. And that gets you that early ad-free access, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. and 2 episodes of Sacred Symbols exclusive to Patreon every week, our supplemental podcast called Sacred Symbols Plus. We just recorded one with the Dukes, which I'm really excited about. I'll give you guys a little hint. It's we each make a custom publisher, and I'm really and just see what happens. And I thought that was a really fun episode. It's a lengthy episode. It's a funny episode. Yeah. So please look forward to that. That goes up imminently. We're reviewing The Last of Us on HBO each and every week. We have podcasts for Dead Space, for Hogwarts Legacy, for others coming up soon as well. So thank you, and merch at laststandmedia.store. All right, let's talk a little bit about the live show. We had a good time. Houston, thank you. We were inside of you, and now we are not inside of you anymore.
In and out.
We were there for just a couple of days, and I was sweating so bad down there. I got to tell you, I was sweating so bad. But I had a really great time. It was good to meet everyone. The accommodations were nice. The building was nice. The people we were working with were very nice. Mr. Milk wrote into us on Patreon. Remember, you can use the weekly thread to write into us and get on the show. It says, "Greetings and salutations, Sacred Crew. I just wanted to chime in about the Houston event. I didn't know anyone when I booked the flight or hotel, so I was a bit nervous, but my concerns were quickly put to rest when I realized how kind and friendly everyone is. You're truly not making it up when you say the community is a special one, and I want to second that for anyone else in the audience who may or may not debate heading to one of these trips in the future. Thanks for the lovely weekend, and thanks for signing my GBA. Thank you, Mr. Milk."
That was a sick GBA.
There. It was a custom Sacred Symbols GBA, and it was pretty cool, but I'm so pleased that everyone had a good time, or it seems like everyone had a good time. And as I said at the end of the show, I think what's most important about the gatherings is actually everyone meeting each other, which is cool, and people becoming friends and people kind of glomming onto each other and experiencing things together, and then hopefully keeping those tethers when you're apart. And it reminds me a little bit of some friends I had when I was a kid in the 90s and into the aughts online, like my online game friends that I talked about everything with, because I didn't have any real life friends that were really into the things I was into. And that was a much different and more mysterious and perhaps even more dangerous era. But I really was pleased to see that, and saw people circulating pictures of them going to different places together and enjoying the show together and doing all the rest. So I just want to thank everyone for coming, and a big congratulations to everyone on the team for a job well done. Chris, what did you think about your experience with this is our third live show. Your third live show as well, because you were in Sacred Symbols 200. So
yeah,
how did you feel?
It was cool. It was fun. I liked. I felt like I had a bit more control over. I don't know. The first one felt nerve-wracking because it was really the first time we had done anything like that, and then the second one was also like, for me it was very stressful too, because I went twice in a row, and also I was like sick and dying in the second one. Sacred 200 I was so sick, like the entire
Chris,
like
it was the Dominoes, right?
What, the Dominoes? The Dominoes was not the Dominoes did not help. Like, it was already we were already in dire straits before that, but like the Dominoes really ruined. And even this show, I was like playing with fire because we had Dominoes again.
So I think my dad was like, I can order something. He pulled it up, and then we got it in, and I was like, oh yeah, Dominoes is what practically killed Chris last time. Round 2, baby.
Yeah. It was fine though this time, but this time felt a little bit more like, I don't know, I feel more seasoned. I definitely felt like I presented better. I definitely felt more comfortable on stage. It's cool. It's fun. It's a fun experience being up there, and having a captive audience that can't leave.
Right. You're not allowed.
You're not allowed.
Now yous can't leave, as they'll say in the Bronx Tale. Dustin, what are your thoughts on the live show, our third live show in Houston? I had a good time. Did you?
Oh, I had a fantastic time. I'm in agreement with Chris in that it's different. Like, I've done some public speaking stuff. I've done public speaking classes in college and stuff, but it's totally different. Like, talking before a class that no one wants to be there, and then switching to, it's like, oh, people are paying to be here to hear you talk. So a different amount of pressure, but this one was totally different, I think, than the last two. Particularly with Sacred 200, and the difference between our first two events is that it was like a level up times 5. As far as the first event, we always say it was our test run. It was kind of small scale, kind of DIY in a lot of ways. And then we go from that to having lights and a fog machine at Sacred 200. So big step up. And this time, I don't know, I was feeling the juice going in. It felt great. So thank you everybody so much for coming. It was awesome to meet so many of you and hang out. got to have some drinks with some people, got to go to an awesome arcade the following day. Overall, and I mentioned this on Constellation, I believe, but I want to mention it here, is that we booked our hotel before the event was even announced. And then afterwards, we were seeing many people that were going to the show also book into the same hotel, which was not really concerning, but I was just kind of a question. And I actually, looking at it now, I actually think it was kind of awesome because everyone was super cool that we saw outside of the show. And it had like a nice little fun element seeing people out and about. So thank you for that. And also shout out to Ben, our producer who did a lot of the legwork as far as like getting he booked all the hotels, got the event center, arranged the VIP session. He did a ton of hard work behind all that. So he did an awesome job.
Yeah. Also shout out to whoever made these custom Sacred Symbols Yeti mugs.
Oh yeah. That's a secret.
And delivered us to us. It was awesome.
We're not supposed to say who made those?
Well, yeah. That person thought they were told to be anonymous, and then the person that gave them said who it was.
Right.
So I'm going to
the person who gave them maybe not the smartest person in the world. But the person who made them definitely one of the smarter people in the world. In fact, the person who gave them thinks he's smarter than he is. I think he's one of those guys.
Whoa.
Oh.
All right. But thank you for the mugs, secret admirer that I know who you are. Much appreciated. Mine's downstairs. I think I have to run it through the dishwasher first. I like just using my smart water bottles. You know, I have just basically a whole bunker of these. So
with this, you can practically get an arm workout if it's full. Like this thing is like,
it's like a neutrino bomb.
Yeah.
Insane.
Wow, we're getting deep into the physics. One other thing I wanted to read from Colin Farley. I thought you guys would find this funny. Hey, DCC. I have your live event bathroom story. No crying this time, however, just as Chris finished his cursed diatribe, I ran to the restroom before the gamer battalion came for his head. As I headed out of the theater, I noticed that the audio from the hall was bleeding into the lobby and even the bathrooms. The theater next door was playing Moulin Rouge. So I stepped into the restroom alongside multiple gentlemen in full suits and saw a few women in full gowns. The gentleman I walked up behind me looked at me and motioned with his eyes and speaker and asked, "What the fuck is this?" I enjoyed the thought of these folks having learned the greatest thing to be loved and to love in return, only to walk into the restroom and have to listen to 2 minutes of Dustin's convoluted timeline or Colin discussing kicking enemies in the dick. Well done on ruining a classy night for not just one lone restroom weeper, but a whole group of small-bladdered fine arts enjoyers. Well done in Houston. Yeah, so we played at the Hobby Center, which is this really cool venue in Houston, like a fine arts, like where you'd see plays and stuff like that. And we played on the small theater in front of 500, but there's a theater right next to it that's 2,500. And the same night was like a production of Moulin Rouge. So we were getting a whole mixture of people, which I didn't really think of. I actually didn't know that the shows would even be concurrent to each other, which is hysterical. And so I love that. I love that maybe some people made a discovery that night about themselves, about others.
Yeah, Sacred Symbols X Moulin Rouge. It's like that, the collaboration slide at every presentation. I love that.
I really liked when our VIP session was upstairs, but we had to go through like the public entryway to get there. So when we were coming back down, we were in an elevator with some women who were going to Moulin Rouge. And Colin, was it you, Colin? Was like, "So are you here to see us tonight?" No,
I didn't say that. No, it was someone else. I'm not going to steal credit for that.
Okay. It was a very funny interaction, though. It was, and also we got to see a little bit of the Moulin Rouge because we flipped it on in the green room during intermission. Yeah. Like we were able to see a little bit. Looked like a good time.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. It was fun. It was good to see you. Glad everyone seemed to have a good time. Thank you for buying merch. Thank you for coming to the VIP session, which was a lot of fun. And we're continuing to learn a lot about how to do these shows. I think we've learned a great deal. I think we're pretty good at it now. And it's funny, like I don't really get worried about it. I worry more about getting there and making sure I'm there, but doing like performing, for instance, some people are like, "Oh, Colin, your little thing, like your stand up at the beginning was pretty funny." And I'm like, I didn't plan any of that. I just thought I would work the stage a little bit and have some fun. And it's for me so low impact like doing Sacred Symbols is much harder than doing that live show was for me. And I said this in the VIP session, and you'll hear about a lot of this in the next episode of Constellation as well, because we've themed, actually that episode should already be up for patrons, but
yes,
we themed Constellation around the live show, not about the live show itself, but things pertaining to it. So like packing, Airbnbs versus hotels, things like that, and so on and so forth. By the way, this is so weird. Dagan just emailed me as I'm saying this, Constellation number 9, with this topic idea, which was going to be my topic idea.
Oh,
that's
brother,
so weird.
Right. Dang.
That's so weird. I don't know how I feel about that. But nonetheless, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for being there. And we appreciate you very much. And we look forward to doing the next one. I think the next one will be in Europe. And we'll have more to say about that sometime. I don't know. I have to talk to Ben. Okay. We're actually going to go. We're going to be inside of it.
Whoa.
I haven't been to Europe in a long time. Okay. Let's get into some comments from the audience. Start out nice and loose. Bryce Tidwell wrote in on Patreon and said, "Hey, CDC, long time, first time. With the upcoming creator clash coming up and the inevitable clobbering Chris will be laying upon the baddest of them all, Froggy Fresh. I was wondering, Colin and Dustin, who could you see yourself trading blows with in the ring? It could be another fellow YouTuber, or Colin, in your case, any historical figure alive or dead. Or Dustin, in your case, any anime waifu or husbando of your choosing. The choice is yours. Would love to hear your choices. Thanks for all you guys do." There are so many people I'd like to beat the shit out of that I'm not even sure where I could possibly begin with like that. Now, some of the people I can beat that I want to beat up, I could easily beat up without any training at all right now. Just beat the shit out of them. There are some people that no matter how much training I got, if I got into the ring with them, they would destroy me. So really, it's just a hypothetical thing. And in fact, I'd keep a lot of these comments to myself. There are some people that need a fucking beating. You know what I mean? You understand? Now, I'm a pacifist. I'm not someone who's just going to walk around punching people, hitting people. But if there's some sort of sanctioned thing, like I was talking at the live show about how, why isn't dueling legal? Why, like seriously, why isn't that legal? Two people say like, we're going to go to this place and we're going to shoot at each other. We're both opting in, you know?
Yeah.
So could I have some sort of, because that's how it actually came up, was in Texas. You could, what was it? You could tell the cops that you're going to fight each other and then it's just totally legal or whatever. And so maybe we have some situation like that, but in some sort of sanctioned event like Chris is doing, I don't know. And I got to say this, that I feel like fighting, if I were going to do, I would never do something like this, but if I were going to, I don't have the discipline, I don't have the constitution, all that kind of stuff. But if I were going to do something like this, I'd be afraid of it being someone that I actually don't like or have some sort of like bad relationship with, because that puts so much more pressure on it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just fighting some rando or fighting a friend or doing it for charity like Chris is doing. But there are some people I would beat the shit out of, no charity, just for free. I would do it just straight up.
No charity.
Just straight, no one gets paid for anything. It's just me beating up someone.
Right.
Dustin, who do you want to fight?
See, my thing is, I don't know. I think I would have the most fun if I was beating up my friends. Like I was thinking immediately, maybe Jimmy Champagne, who is much taller than me, be a little scary. Maybe Brad from Easy Allies. I also thought maybe Gene, but I don't know. Gene, he's still recovering, which I saw. Shout out, totally 100% cancer free now.
Yeah.
So
Love
Gene,
it.
maybe work it up a bit. Maybe I'll fight all three of them at once. I'm much smaller and I'm not fast, so I really have no advantage. I just think it would be more fun that way. You know, when you fight someone that I've never actually fought anyone ever, so I feel like I would want it to be a friendly fight.
Man, holy shit.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten beaten up a couple times, so I definitely have fought someone. I was younger. I mean, I was young, but
Yeah.
How tall is Gene?
I got fucking pasted. Huh?
How tall is Gene? Do we know?
I don't know. Not very.
Okay, well, maybe Gene's the guy then. We got to let him. I got to give him time though. He can train up.
He's wiry though. Like I don't know. You have I'm not saying this is an insult, but like there's a weight differential between you two.
Yeah.
So he either has to bulk up or you have to lose weight.
Yeah.
Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because it would be unfair.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Of course.
You'd have that reason. But yeah, I'm thinking right now of people that I would love to fight. I don't know. I think it's fun that Chris is doing this, and I think it's awesome. It's bold because it requires like early buy-in, and then you're locked in. I mean, what is Chris going to do now?
Yeah.
Right. Like you can't be flaky. You got to train and work hard or you're going to get embarrassed. It's a lot. I appreciate that you're doing this. It's like a good mental exercise. And I think it's good for you to do as well.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the main reason is because I feel like mentally this would be like a good thing to do just to commit to something like this. Because if I was like, oh, hey, I'm a boxer now and I had to do this for like in perpetuity, I would have quit so long ago. It's insane. But the fact that there is an end date, and that like after it, I don't have to do it. Probably still will on some level. I don't know if I'll keep up the same exact regimen, but I'll definitely scale it down and still do it at least like once a week. Because it's a fun way to lose. It's a fun way to exercise specifically. Because I used to hate going to the gym and just like picking up a heavy thing and putting it down like for 30 minutes. And it's just like a really bland activity. Just like you run on the treadmill and it's like,
oh yeah, I get so bored.
It's so boring. Even just running outside is it's better, but it's not all that interesting. Boxing is fun, so I'll probably keep it up with it.
How many times have you gotten your bell rung?
Oh, I don't even know how many at this point. Like a decent number of times. Like
nice,
easily over
concussions.
Good. Well, you're not getting like it's socked like full pressure, but like I mean, a punch in the face, regardless of how hard it is a punch in the face, And I was telling people that I was training with, or not that I was training with, that like some friends of mine who are local and close, and they were asking me about it, and I was like, I would easily much rather get hit in the face than the body or like the chest specifically. Because I guess where all your fucking organs are, you'd think getting hit in like the brain would be like straight like worse, but like in the short term it really isn't. Like you recover from a face punch like so easily in comparison to like a punch of the solar plexus. Just stuns you.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like the center. It's like the right below your sternum.
Oh, so where you get your wind knocked out?
Yeah, but it's beyond that. It's like it's almost like
your life knocked out.
Yeah, it's almost like the frame rate of your organs go down. Like
I had no idea that's where the solar plexus was.
Yeah.
So it's also called the celiac plexus, which makes sense.
You could have told me anything. I mean, you could have made that word up and I would have believed you, honestly.
Yeah, it sounds like a Destiny word.
Is it because it's at the center of your body?
Yeah.
So they call it solar. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, solar would be like sun, but I mean, obviously the solar system. Yeah, fair enough. Well, we're obviously wishing you the very best. I'm sending you all my positive energies and all my best techniques. We'll get you all warmed up. We're going to tape your hands up.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to win. I feel it. I feel it in my balls. I feel it. Matty Ice wrote in, not to be confused with Matt Ryan, the washed up quarterback. He says, hi, folks. I've lurked in the LSM shadows for years and never planned to write in, preferring to remain a part of the silent majority. However, I'm performing my greatest athletic feat this Saturday, attempting a 15K, and plan to listen to Sacred Symbols during my nearly 2-hour run. My hope is that the crew can give me words, encouraging or otherwise, to help power me through to the finish line. This is critical, since I've decided that upon completion of the race, I will retire from exercising forever. I appreciate all that you do, and while my wife couldn't care less about video games, she thinks Micah is cool and actually pays attention when she's on the show. Oh, thank you, Matty Ice. All right, let's give him some words of encouragement. He's running a 15K. That's no joke.
That's crazy.
I do about 4K a day, and I'm pretty gassed after that.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine doing a 15K. That's a lot. Dustin, let's give him some words of encouragement. What comes to mind for you?
Well, the thing that came to mind instantly is that aren't there some long distance runs where people shit themselves? Like it's just part of the run that it's like, yeah, you're going to have to poop. Pee. So
I think so. I think pee and poop. Yeah, I think that does happen. You see pictures of people doing it.
You should just do that anyway, even though it's not a super long distance. Be like, oh, I thought that's what you did. Just act natural.
Shit yourself 5 minutes into the race. It's a power move, dude.
Yeah.
I could never, man. I used to do
the barbarism of that. It's insane.
I used to do summer gym growing up, so I didn't have to do gym during the school year. I don't know.
Really? Wait, what is that? I never heard of that in my life.
Summer gym was an option in the Butler School District where you could go for 3 weeks from like 8 to 12. And 5 days a week, you would do gym exclusively during the summer. Like the first 3 weeks of summer, you'd go do summer gym. Then you didn't have to worry about your gym during the school year, and you could either take another class. The only thing you weren't allowed to do was take a study hall, which I thought was dumb. My thing was I wanted to get all the gym over with. I hated, like, if you had a gym during the day and you're all sweaty and nasty.
Yeah, it's gross.
You don't want to do that. I was horrible at summer gym. I was just I was trying to do as little as possible. I was trying to like walk on the track and listen to like Weezer, like Pinkerton or something like that. And that's it. Like I just wanted to chill, maybe try to talk to some girls, and that's it. So shout out to any athletic ability at all, Maddie. I think you can do it.
Yeah.
Chris, any positive feedback adding to the light chakras that are surrounding this man?
Yeah, man. Good luck. It's honestly, it sounds pretty doable. What was that? 10 miles?
Yeah, it's about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a feat for sure. Like you can't just run into that out of nowhere. But I mean, if you've been building up to this, I got faith in you. Just don't. I would say don't shit yourself if you can help it, because that's just gonna make the remaining whatever's remaining of your run very, very unpleasant.
Oh yeah, the chafing and all the smell and
it's gonna be a whole thing.
Be hideous.
Well, I guess you won't have to deal with the smell because you're constantly running away from it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
But
Everyone behind you,
everybody else is.
You're motivating everyone to run faster.
Yeah,
so that's actually interesting. That's actually interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's a strategy.
Right. Maddie, good luck to you, my friend. Stay safe out there. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Athletic Greens and their specialized, high-quality, and effective AG1 health supplement, which you can discover for yourself right now at athleticgreens.com/sacred. While I wouldn't call myself a health nut, I don't exactly eat the way I should, I am a bit of a working out nut. If a typical month has 30 days in it, I'm working out on 28 or 29 of those days minimum, doing high-impact interval training on my elliptical and lifting free weights as well. But my routine is a strange one, because I also typically eat only once a day in the evenings, sleep late, and am missing the requisite energy necessary to really nail my workouts most days. That's why I'm so pleased to recommend Athletic Greens and their AG1 supplement, because when I take it, I definitely notice a difference. First of all, I mentioned earlier that I don't eat well, and I don't. Athletic Greens is by far the healthiest thing I've probably ever ingested, and the same may be true for you. It's like taking a bunch of vitamins and minerals, but doing so via a scoop of powder you mix into a glass of water. The good-tasting concoction that results is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food-sourced ingredients of the absolute highest quality, and the results are obvious. More energy, a better mood, healthier skin, hair, and nails, and just imagine what it's doing in the complex machinery inside of your body. This is a daily habit worth developing, a mere scoop in a glass of water each day to feel and perform your best. For me, it's an awesome workout supplement that gets me moving, but for you, it could be great to take as you start your mornings or before you begin an arduous day working in the yard, or even before your men's league games at night. You'll be hard-pressed to have a healthier minute of your day than when you're downing AG1, and doing so makes it easier to live your best life. My friends, I understand balking at having to do actual work to better your life, but this is a glass of water every day with a tasty and healthy powder mixed in. If you're looking for an easier way to take supplements, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs of AG1 with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/sacred. That's athleticgreens.com/SACRED to begin your AG1 journey. Again, go to athleticgreens.com/sacred today. That's athleticgreens.com/sacred. Check it out. Sacred Symbols is brought to you by Babbel and their award-winning language learning app used by millions the world over. See what it can do for you at babbel.com/sacred. The harsh reality is that we live in a multilingual world, and there are too many of us that can barely speak English, nonetheless find a new and worldly way to communicate. That's why I find Babbel so appealing. The language learning app that emphasizes bite-sized lessons in order to get you to build a solid foundation of knowledge before moving on up. This seems like a no-brainer, but think about it. I wasn't the only one sitting in a 45-minute French class 5 days a week for 6 years, was I? Bored teachers, boring textbooks, quizzes and exams up the wazoo, no practical implications within a nautical mile. That's not how you learn a language. No, you learn a language by using it, by having fun with it, by experiencing it in new, different, and unexpected ways. This is all the stuff that Babbel specializes in, across 14 different languages from Spanish and Russian to Indonesian and Portuguese. And unlike Babbel's competitors, constructed partially or wholly by AI, Babbel was handcrafted by more than 150 language experts from around the globe, and they've put together something truly special. In as little as 3 weeks, you'll be able to have real conversations in your chosen language, so long as you spend the necessary time and work hard. And hey, learning isn't exactly a downer, since you'll be doing so across podcasts, games, videos, stories, and even live classes, not just the memorization and test taking you're no doubt used to from your language journeys from the past. There's no risk in trying Babbel either. There's a 20-day money-back guarantee, and Babbel expects you to keep them honest. My friends, experience what I experienced when I used Babbel to sharpen up my long-dormant French skills. A guide to learning a language unlike any other you've used before. A far cry from learning in a tired old classroom. Right now, get up to 55% off your subscription when you go to babbel.com/sacred. That's babbel.com/sacred. That's babbel.com/sacred for up to 55% off your subscription. Babbel, language for life. David Wilson II wrote in, I wanted to read this quick. This is for me. My dear boys, like you've expressed on the show, I too have been a longtime consumer of honey bunches of oats with almonds, of course. I recently opened a brand new box, and I realized the bag inside was barely over halfway full. I believe we reached a point where they're not only skimping on the almonds, but they're shorting us on our total volume of cereal. Something must be done. These corporate fat cats are inflating the profit margin and reducing our total number of toys. I issue a formal warning to the Post cereal company. Stand down. Thanks, and keep the cereal to milk ratio even. Thank you, David, for writing in. I'm glad I'm not the only one in the notice. It's hard to know if Chris was on those episodes or not about honey bunches of oats, but I find the topic fascinating. Where are the almonds? There are no almonds in the honey bunches of oats with almonds anymore. Next time I buy a bag, I'm dumping it out, and I'm going to show you how few almonds are in it.
I don't remember this conversation, but I do have to say I really appreciate the expertise of this Seinfeld reference, David. Like this is a golden. This is when Kramer is the mall Santa and becomes communist. And he's talking about he's like these corporate fat cats are inflating the profit margin and reducing your total number of toys. So good.
When Kramer becomes a communist.
Santa
that's a Mickey episode. I love Mickey.
Yeah, like that delivery of Mickey, like Santa is not a commie, is like one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite lines of dialogue in anything.
He's a great. Mickey was a great character. I wish they kept him around for a while, but they could have done even more with him, I think.
Yeah.
I just love the physical comedy of him and Kramer together. It was perfect.
Yeah,
it was just absolutely amazing. Perfect. Like when they actually get into scuffles and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's so good. But as far as I don't know, I feel like this is happening. I'm noticing this with chips. Like where like you get like a party-sized bag of I don't know anything, and it, like half of it's empty, and they say it's like they say whatever's in there is like to preserve it, but like I feel like I don't buy that.
Well, it's like hotels telling you like, oh, we're not going to wash your sheets because of the environment. It's like, oh, is that right? Is that why you're not washing the sheets? Because of the environment? Yeah, I believe you. No doubt about it. Where are the almonds? Almonds are, I know almonds are difficult to grow. 1.2 gallons of water per almond, apparently, which is nuts.
What?
I eat almonds like they're going out of style, dude. I buy the 2-bag. Now we're buying the 2-pound bag of almonds. Like we went to, did I say this on the show previously? We went to BJ's and got like the big cooking bags of almonds and walnuts just because I wanted to eat them. And the guy was leaving on, they check your receipt. The guy's like, ooh, someone's baking tonight. And I was like, no, I'm just eating nuts.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. Nothing going on here. Save your comments for another person.
You said 1.2 gallons per almond.
That's what they say. 1.2 gallons of water per almond.
I eat them and I don't feel any less thirsty afterwards.
Yeah, I feel them and I don't care. I eat them rather and I don't care about anything. I don't care about any of it.
I feel like that's not a, I don't know, that sacrifice doesn't seem worth it. I don't know, man. The almond is fine. I'm a cashew person myself.
Oh yeah, cashews are, I mean, that's the top nut.
Yeah.
They're not technically nuts, I guess, but we all know what we're talking about. We all know what we're talking about.
The top nut.
It goes cashew, pistachio, almond, walnut, I think, in some order like that.
Yeah.
And they're all good.
I generally agree, I think, yeah.
Are cashews not nuts? What are you saying?
I think a cashew is like it's not a nut, technically. I mean, look, cashew.
Well, what is it? It's like a bovine? What the fuck?
A cashew tree is a tropical evergreen tree, blah, blah, blah. The cashew apple, accessory fruit.
It's an accessory fruit?
It's a fruit. So an accessory fruit is a fruit in which some of the flesh is derived not from the floral ovary, but from some adjacent tissue exterior to the carpel. And examples include a pear, a fig, and a strawberry.
What the fuck?
We eating something from the fruits
We're
ovaries
just-
is what you're saying.
Do you think that scientists just make things up and and everyone's like, that's fine?
We're making shit up at this point. Like, so a cashew is in the strawberry family. Is that basically what the?
I
claim
guess
is
it's
being?
related to the strawberry in some way. Yeah.
Oh.
Because you know what a cashew looks like when it grows?
I
on a
guess
tree?
not. I've never thought. About it.
It's like it's huge. It's like way bigger than the cashew, and the cashew you get is like shelled from inside of it. So I think that's what they're saying.
Oh,
is like,
I see.
You know what I mean?
All right. I mean,
Isn't
I guess
the fruit poisonous too?
I think so. Like, I think you have to I think you could eat it, but you have to like be trained to do it. You know, like there's a special way to do it.
Oh,
Similar
is-
to like some of the fish they eat in Japan.
that is bizarre looking.
Yeah. I want to
Huh.
eat the whole thing though. The whole thing looks good. And you know why? Because it's shaped like a cashew. I fucking love cashews, dude. I love them.
Yeah.
That's probably half the reason why I'm putting on a little weight is because I don't eat sweets really, but I'll pound just almonds and cashews and walnuts and pistachios. Oh my God. I fucking love pistachios. They're so good.
They are.
Especially the salt and pepper ones. Ooh,
S&P.
my friends. All right, what are we talking about here? Let's move on. David, thank you for writing in. I feel your pain. It's all nonsense. Everything's getting smaller. They're giving us less food, and we're all getting fatter.
And
Dude,
sad.
I've been watching these 600-pound life TLC shows on YouTube.
Oh,
They
yeah.
do some really great like sizzle reels of these things. The best sizzle reels are actually for Bar Rescue. I'm impressed that Paramount does those themselves. But I've been watching this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know how you get that big. Hard for me to understand it.
Yeah.
Hard for me to know. Now, I see myself inching up to 200 pounds, not even really that close to 200 pounds, but inching up to that, and I get horrified. Just horrified.
Yeah. The
Got
thing
to
is,
spring
it
into
can't-
action.
The thing is, it can't just happen. You know, it's like if you could theoretically wake up one day and be like 500 pounds heavier, then I would understand it a little more. But like, there gets to a point where it's like, at what point did you realize that this was a problem?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
why was it? And why was it after you couldn't walk anymore?
Right.
You know,
That-
like things like that.
My favorite part is that the guy that, you know, they use like that. He's like Turkish, I think, the Dr. Now, the guy with like, he has like the gold stethoscope and all that kind of stuff. He's like the doctor that's on those shows. And he puts him on a 1,200 calorie diet, which is so, I couldn't even imagine doing something like that. But then they come in and are like, you've gained 50 pounds. And they're like, I'm sticking to the diet. And you're just like, how is that even possible? He's like, you
Yeah.
should just be losing weight naturally. Like you shouldn't even have to be doing anything if you just ate normally. And so I kind of try to become a little cognizant of that in my own life. Watch these as motivational tools. But hey, be fat or skinny if you want. I don't even know how we got on this conversation, but be fat or skinny if you want, but take good care of yourselves.
Yeah.
Take good care of yourselves. Oh, you know what? Actually, this is perfect. This is actually perfect. Andrew Classic wrote in. This is going to be so weird. You're going to think this is so weird. Hey, you SLSSs, sassy little sacred scoundrels. How do you think of that? Sassy little sacred scoundrels.
It's too overwrought, but like,
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I'll take it.
I wanted to write in thanking Colin for one of the best laughs I've had in a long time. During The Last of Us Episode 6 spoiler talk, Colin so matter-of-factly speculated as to why the two... And so this is a spoiler, I guess, technically for The Last of Us Episode 6, but it really isn't. So that's why I'm comfortable reading it, but I'll let you skip ahead if you want. He speculated as to why the two Native Americans in the cabin were so fat so long after the collapse of civilization. He went as far as to consider a secret meaning behind their obeseness. I couldn't stop laughing. I think it's pretty obvious the showrunners put zero thought into that and just cast a couple of actors. So hearing Colin go on and on about how fat they were made me literally laugh out loud. Then I thought I heard Micah giggle because she was thinking the same thing. But when Colin asked her, she kind of covered it up and played into a speculation. I sense a similar, almost laughing Dustin response as well. Thank you for such a great laugh, Colin. Only in my dreams will the actors be driving in their car listening to you speculate why they are so fat. I want to be very clear about this. I wasn't making fun of them for being fat. I was asking how it's possible. Are people not... Come on, guys.
It's pretty funny.
These people are in this situation. The woman is 300 pounds.
Yeah.
How?
Probably all those fucking cashews.
They have a cashew tree.
Yeah, they have a cashew tree. They're wasting all their water trying to grow almonds. I don't know, man.
It's so funny. Like people got really caught up on that. I had to acknowledge that, Dustin, because people really got caught up on that section of the podcast, but I meant it. I wasn't trying to be mean.
I
meant
didn't
it.
think that. didn't think you
really
were being
thought that it
mean.
was trying to tell you something, being like, these people are very well connected, or these people have supplies, or these people have a good trade value with whatever they have. I personally think that that's obvious. I think if that was an oversight, that's a fucking major oversight, and I don't believe that that's an oversight. So,
do you think they're gonna address it by the end of the season?
No, but are there any other fat people in the show?
No.
So,
I
it's not an insult against fat people. It's just an observation, you know. It bothered me that not more people were tuned into that, because I thought that was peculiar. You know, personally, it's not important to the episode at all. It really literally isn't. So I'm not telling you anything that you
I haven't even seen this episode. I'm so far behind. I haven't seen the last like 2, I think.
Some will say you're left behind.
Whoa.
Anyway, I'm glad that I could make you laugh, but I didn't mean it to be funny. I really didn't. I thought it was insightful that I was saying that. I guess it wasn't, though. I guess it was mean.
Those are the best laughs.
Yeah, that's true. The laughs that are not intended, for sure. All right. Let's get a correction and then talk about some things as we kind of stretch our legs here. Midnight wrote in with a correction. A few people wrote in. It's an important one. Hey, CDC. I just wanted to write in with a small correction from last week's episode when you were talking about everyone's favorite topic, the Activision Blizzard acquisition. It was mentioned that Microsoft was being disingenuous by excluding Nintendo from their graphs. I just wanted to point out that this was not Microsoft's decision. It was the CMA and European Commission who have decided to create a new quote-unquote high-performance console category, which excludes Nintendo, and which makes their case that the acquisition would be bad for competition and hurt Sony. Surely adding Nintendo to the graph would only strengthen Microsoft's claim because Nintendo is dominant, and that would just make Xbox's pie even smaller. I agree with you there. Just wanted to point that out. Overall, I, like everyone else, am so sick of the news and just can't wait till it's over, whether it's rejected or approved. I agree. I wanted to acknowledge this is an important correction, so you're right about that. So take that into account. I will say that a few things have popped up. First of all, apparently Sony has been successfully subpoenaed for a bunch of documents that will relate to all exclusive deals signed outside of first party second and third party after January 1st, 2019. It's entirely likely we're going to see these documents in some way, shape, or form. So that's really interesting and really exciting. And good on Microsoft for getting those. I love when the tree is shaken and we get some things out of it. Sony did this to themselves. So Sony has no one to blame for themselves for this kind of exposure. So that's happening. Also, I believe that the European Union has delayed its decision by 10 days. I think with all of these different things, there's not much to say. I think we'll just keep a holding pattern for now. That said, I really appreciate everyone's kind words about our conversation last week. And sorry about that particular error. Happy to correct it, but nothing else to add right now, I don't think. All right. One thing I wanted to talk to you guys about because, a couple of people have been writing in about this and we should get into it. Robbie Sorrentino wrote in and said, hello there, CDC. First time, long time. After seeing the live service elements in the Suicide Squad coverage from the recent State of Play, I can't help but feel disappointed we are not getting a true single-player narrative game from Rocksteady. Don't get me wrong, I love a good looter shooter and have had tons of fun with games like Destiny, Borderlands, etc., where those mechanics make a ton of sense, but having a battle pass and gear scores in a comic book game just seems so out of touch. The Batman Arkham series is a big reason why I fell in love with video games in the first place, from the power of their storytelling to the innovative combat and stealth systems. With studio co-founders Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker leaving the company at the end of last year, could this game flopping be the end of Rocksteady as we know it? Lastly, just wanted to say that your commitment to quality, consistency, and hilarious content is so awesome. You all make my walks to campus every day a joy, and I probably get some head turns as I am grinning ear to ear just strolling down the sidewalk listening to Sacred Symbols. It's your personalities and passion for what you do that I think keep us all tuning in every week. Thank you, Robbie. I wrote that whole last part myself. Thank you, Robbie, for writing in. So we talked about during the VIP session at the live show and then a little bit during the live show about this, but we got to acknowledge this State of Play. So for people that aren't aware, the timing of last episode of Sacred Symbols was such that we recorded it a day earlier than usual, hence Chris's absence, because we were traveling to Houston for the live show and we wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything. However, because of that, we actually brought a Yeti or Blue mic with us or whatever it was to maybe record a pickup under the assumption maybe they would say something interesting, but there really was nothing there. I think Baldur's Gate probably was the biggest news. Yeah. Coming to PS5, Baldur's Gate 3, and some VR stuff. But a big part of this, probably 2/5 or so of the entire presentation, was a 15+ minute presentation of Suicide Squad. And so people were really interested to hear from us about this. And we talked about it briefly during the VIP session. We talked about it briefly during the show, but I think we should memorialize it here on Sacred Symbols itself so everyone can hear widely. Chris, I'm curious what you think about Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, now that we've seen it in action so much.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a confusing looking game because there are parts of it that I think look fun. I think it looks like it could be a good time. I just think it's also an example of a game that doesn't need to be a part of the genre that it's in being kind of shoehorned into it. And you know, there are these gear scores and, you know, overwrought, really busy looking menus with like a ton of numbers and stats and different levels for like there's multiple levels per character or something. I think there's like separate ranks, and it's like this doesn't really need to be this overcomplicated. I think people respond really, really well to things that are really, really polished, really, really great, and really, really simple. I think it's one of the reasons why Dead Space is so, like, even still to this day, like Dead Space Remake, you know, it changed, you know, depending on who you talk to, it either changed very, very little or very, very little or it changed a lot. But Dead Space is a simple game, and it still resonates today because it's so approachable. And I feel like these games are just becoming less and less approachable, especially as live service games, you know, retain their audiences. Like people who are playing Destiny, who are in their 9th year of playing Destiny, are not going to switch over to Suicide Squad and have Suicide Squad be their main game. Like it's just not going to happen. People who are doing Fortnite for that long, not going to switch over to Suicide Squad. It's not going to happen. So what you're doing essentially is you're taking a game that could have been very, very enjoyable and very, very solid without all of these extra, you know, shoehorned in design elements, and ultimately weakening it to gain an audience that you can't possibly hope to siphon. And it's just weird. I don't know. And it's frustrating because I think the game looks fun to play. I don't think it looks particularly rock steady. It looks very, you know, it looks kind of Outriders-y in some ways, like the third person shooting and like, you know, the movement of it. It looks like it's fun to play, but it just doesn't. I feel like it's going to be a game where the rest of the design elements around it strangle it, which is exactly what happened with Avengers, by the way. People were talking about Avengers really positively when they were just talking about the single player story, but then like all the, you know, the live service kind of symptoms kind of started rearing their heads after a while. And then that became, you know, a problem for them. And ironically now all that stuff is free. And it's hilariously enough, now is probably the best time to play Marvel's Avengers because you don't have to pay for any of that shit. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't, it feels like a game that was in development for a very long time. Yeah, that's the sense that I get. Like, not necessarily that it looks bad, because it looks fun again, but I feel like we are seeing the end of this kind of thought process, the end of, you know, hey, let's make everything a live service. Or, you know, if they do make a live service, they're going to make it with a new IP. They're not really going to do like Suicide Squad. I feel like it's a very 2019 pitch that has taken till 2023 to kind of fully show us.
I guess I'm confused personally by the math, like what the intention is of doing this with this game. This is what I think the benefit of kind of sitting and marinating on a piece of news for a little while, which we very rarely get to do, and like kind of thinking about it 2 or 3 layers deeper. What I've come to, and Dustin, I'll throw it over to you, is I think the game looks fun personally. I think the game looks pretty. I'm turned off by all the gear stuff or whatever, and I wanted something more Arkham-like. But if you reduce it down to its bare essence, right? Arkham Knight comes out 2015, et cetera, and so on. What is the cost benefit analysis of saying, let's spend X amount of money, let's say $100 million or $150 million building a AAA DC game, and we could either sell it once with DLC, perhaps like some expansion later on, and we can make our money that way, or we can sell it once and then hope people stick around but turn people off at the same time. In other words, with a game as strong as kind of something from the Arkham lineage, wouldn't you want to just sell the game once, then maybe have a $15 or $20 expansion, make easily more than $1 billion in gross revenue by selling the game 15 million times or something like that and having something very solid. In other words, I don't know if this makes sense what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is, why did they put so much work into making it so that people have to stick with this game? That was never the point of the Arkham games. And that they spent all this time making a game like that, I think, is a disservice to the studio itself. It's very BioWare. It's very similar. It's very, like we said, Crystal Dynamics. And it just seems like a waste of time that doesn't even necessarily make them more money. So I don't understand it, because this isn't a game. It's not like Wo Long or one of these games that is very good, but comes out and is going to sell a few 100,000 or a few million copies and you're going to make a little bit of money on it. This is a fucking Batman game, basically, from a studio that people haven't heard from in years. So I guess I just don't understand why you would take yourself off the board like that to make maybe a menial amount of money in between. Does that make sense to you? It's just another example of the wrong ammunition in the wrong gun, I guess.
So I feel a little different about this than you guys, and tell me if you feel like what I'm saying is off base. But to me, from what I rewatched parts of the State of Play today, and while this game has a lot of live service elements in it, I don't think they've ever directly referred to it as a live service game or tried to compare it to a game like Destiny. It actually reminds me more of a game, Colin, one of your favorites, as far as its format, like Outriders. Seems to have a full campaign with gear.
That's what Chris was saying. I totally agree with that, yeah.
And to me, and it's funny because I remember back, this was years ago, but I got to preview Outriders at PAX, and I remember asking them, like, is this a live service game like Destiny? And they're like, no, we're doing a full campaign that is full co-op. There'll be lots of gear and different loot to get, but it'll have an ending and we'll add more stuff to it. But it's not the type of game that is like Destiny, where it's like an ongoing forever service. And that's kind of what I see from this game. And what I've been thinking about this is that everyone, I think, had a lot of expectations about what they wanted this game to be. And I think that's totally fair, coming from Rocksteady and the Arkham games, and them really kind of pitching this as the next thing. I mean, even in that State of Play, they say this is the next game in the Arkhamverse. So yeah, that's going to come with some expectations. But it made me think of, and I don't think he's the first person to say this, but he's the person I heard it from, is there's a YouTuber, MKBHD. He does tech videos. But he brings up this point about expectations being the thief of joy. And I think that that's a lot of what's happening right now. And to be clear, if you're not into what you're seeing from this game, that's totally fine. And if you're maybe disappointed that it's not what you want it to be, I get that also. But I don't necessarily look at this and see like a really bad game. And I don't really see Avengers in this game. I get the comparison, especially because it's superheroes and Marvel and DC and stuff like that, but I don't get that vibe from this game. Sure, there's elements that don't sound very good, particularly they mentioned the battle pass and stuff like that. But I don't know. To me, I just don't see this as like they're not asking for this to be your next lifestyle game. They're looking at this. I don't know. My take is that this is a more Outriders type approach.
Yeah, but Outriders was asking to be your next, at least temporary lifestyle game. It's not a small game,
Well,
I mean, it didn't work. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, from my opinion, I'm watching gameplay right now of it. I can understand saying like, well, why wouldn't they expect an Arkham game? And they're getting Fortnite. I mean, this is what it looks like to me. Now, I think Fortnite's fun. I mean, that's totally fine, but I can understand people's disappointment in it because it's definitely very different and it's being very poorly received. I mean, that's why I wanted to talk about it. I was surprised, maybe not so surprised. 6 days ago on PlayStation's official YouTube channel, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, official co-op gameplay, 8.7 thousand thumbs up, 42,000 thumbs down.
Yeah, it's
not that it's going to matter. I think this game is good for many millions of copies, but
yeah,
right.
But that's not what we're talking about. It's not talking about if it's going to matter. It's talking about should they have ever done this. And I'm actually I disagree with you a little bit, Dustin. I think that this was.
I thought that I never disagreed with you, Colin. Oh, sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, that's so anyone says. You read too much what the audience says. We disagree all the time, but but for me, I look at it and I'm like, I can understand people's disappointment in this. Absolutely. It's very different. You hit the nail on the head, Dustin. Calling it they called it an Arkham game. That comes with a certain level of expectations of at least what it is. And that's like calling Call of Duty a Call of Duty game, but it's a third person shooter. I mean, it's just fundamentally not a Call of Duty game anymore. You know?
Right. I am in agreement that I think that they have sold the game the wrong way completely. And a lot of this is their own fault. The main point that I'm trying to make is that we don't know if this game is bad yet.
No.
I actually think it looks fun.
I should be clear about that. I don't think it's going to be bad at all.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying you guys are saying that. I'm saying that I'm seeing comments that are people like, dead in the water. This is bullshit. And I'm like, calm down.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, no, it's not. I feel like it's going to be a solid game. I don't think it's going to be Avengers quality. You know, I just think there's certain elements of the design language that they are using that evokes Avengers, and Avengers evokes live service. And I think it's unfortunate because I just think the game would be ultimately a lot stronger without those elements. Whatever it ends up being, if it's a 7, if it's like a 7 out of 10 experience, then it could have been an 8 out of 10, I think, without this fucking gear scoring shit. Like I feel like all of these design elements place where it just really doesn't need to be, inherently like docks the game in some way, at least for me, because like when I see it, I get tired like immediately. This is definitely not a day one for me anymore. Like, whereas before I was like actually like sincerely curious and excited. Now I might hold off and I might wait, you know, just to hear like what exactly is the situation, what am I getting myself into. And I also just expected the gameplay to look a little bit different. Everybody seems to swim through the air. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody seems to like dolphin around. It's very bizarre. Like, it's cool, it's fun. I don't know if it really makes sense for Suicide Squad, but like, I mean, whatever. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'm watching it now. Like Captain Boomerang, like he jumps off a building, then slides.
Yeah, it's very bizarre.
The Sharkman is jumping very high in the air. He's doing flips.
It almost feels like a game that wasn't initially a Suicide Squad game, that they then had to, you know what I feel like? And this is totally speculation. This is totally like, this is just gut feeling. Could potentially be entirely wrong, right? But it feels like they wanted to make like an original co-op IP thing, like some original co-op shooter. And then the publisher was like, this needs to be a DC game because you guys are good at that. And then they were like, all right.
That could be.
So that's what I get to say, because why is Harley Quinn swinging around like Spider-Man? Like, that's just weird to me. Like, it doesn't come across like, it doesn't read like Harley Quinn, really. The shark kind of can fly also sometimes. It's just weird. And I could believe that was actually like something that occurred. But there's also rumors that they canceled the Superman game to make this, which would explain Metropolis as the setting. But like, I don't know. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, like, I do think the game's going to be good. I don't think this game has a shot of being like anywhere near Avengers, you know?
No, I think what I think will end up happening with this is the game will sell well. It'll probably do pretty well. It's probably pretty good. But what they're going to end up finding out is that it's going to have this Arkham-like life cycle where it's going to be alive for a little while and then ultimately fall off. But they're going to lack that zeitgeist moment killer status that Arkham had, especially Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. I don't think Arkham Knight had it as much. And so I think that's what they're going to learn. And I mean, this really is either the end of, it's certainly the end of Rocksteady as we know it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They're not going to end Rocksteady, but it goes into this thesis that I've been putting forth, that teams should just be reformed and should be more ephemeral. And maybe it's time to go. And so May 26, 2023 is when it comes to PlayStation 5. I personally just want to reiterate, I think the game is going to be fun and good. I just totally understand why people are disappointed in this. And I agree with you, Chris. It's certainly not a game I'm probably going to play right away, although we'll have to see what the status of everything is at that time, like what is out.
Yeah.
But I did something funny, which I thought was interesting. Micah and I were like looking through the store. We watched the trailer, we watched the gameplay. I'm like, this shit, I don't know, gives me a bad feeling. And then I went and looked at Gotham Knights, and it was like $22 or whatever. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to buy this. and maybe I'll play that one day. So I just like bought it, added it to my download list because I was watching a trailer of it, and I'm like, yeah, it's at 30 frames, it's pretty tough, but it looks like an Arkham game. I mean, that game is much more of an Arkham game than this will ever be. And if that's what you're looking for, maybe that's where you have to go. But I'll be very interested to see how this does and how people actually receive it. I'll be interested to see like what the critical reception of it will be, and maybe people will be totally turned around on it when it comes out. People are not going to be able to resist this. And remember, an important piece of information to remember: Gotham Knights is one of the best-selling games in the United States last year. So,
Yep.
like everything people in the mainstream were complaining about and its frame rate and this and that didn't matter. And for a lot of people, this whole thing might be very attractive. I don't really know. So
Yeah.
All right.
Well said.
Sacred Symbols is sponsored by BetterHelp and their affordable, accessible, and effective brand of online therapy, which you can begin using for yourself at betterhelp.com/symbols. I talk about it often on the show, but I'm a true believer in therapy and in taking good care of your mental health. And I think it's important to actively advocate for that, to try and remove the mysticism and barriers surrounding it for some folks. It seems so common these days to know to get help and to not be stigmatized for it, but in reality, it wasn't that long ago that many people were suffering in silence, unable or unwilling to get the help they needed for a whole host of reasons. What's so appealing about the services offered by my friends at BetterHelp is that, while they can't force you to accept help, they can do a lot to encourage you to accept mental health treatment. That's because therapy is useful for all of us, and yet it's not nearly accessible to all. BetterHelp does its best to narrow the gap by offering completely remote therapy conducted online via video, audio, or even just text, so that you can leverage the many benefits of therapy in your own life without having to find someone in your area, drive there, take a subway or Uber or whatever, and then do it all in reverse. Heck, using BetterHelp isn't only easier than in-person therapy, but it's cheaper too, and it can be just as effective for whatever might ail you. Trouble in a relationship, problems at work, issues with confidence, addiction, money, family stuff, you name it. As someone who has used therapy on and off for years, and as someone who has found it increasingly useful the older I get, I want to encourage you to try BetterHelp for yourself, to gain a deeper self-awareness and understanding. If you're thinking of trying therapy, BetterHelp is an awesome option for you. It's online, flexible, and easy to use. And if you don't like your therapist, you can switch at any time with no additional cost to you. My friends, discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/symbols today. That's betterhelp.com/SYMBOLS to get 10% off your first month of sessions. That's betterhelp.com/symbols for modern, affordable online therapy tailor-made for you. Let's move on. Oh yeah, His Holiness wrote in, just a kind of an aside on this. He says, "Hey CDC, as you have probably seen, the response to Suicide Squad has been abysmal. However, one particular comment on Reddit caused me to take notice that, quote, the games as a service ship sailed ages ago, end quote, and that, quote, everyone who is interested in this concept has chosen their game by now. Some people are Destiny, others are COD, some are Fortnite or Apex. Nobody has the time to keep up with 5 or 6 services at the same time, end quote. If this is true, where does that leave Factions? Factions has been in development for a while, but that has game as a service shipped. But has that game as a service shipped, and is there a risk that Factions will be dead on arrival?" I understand what you're saying. I don't think Factions is going to be looked at as a game as a service. And I've said this before that I have this feeling Factions is going to be like a full Last of Us game in co-op with a lot of multiplayer components to it. That's just the feeling I get based on the artwork and based, again, on what I feel like is very deliberate language talking about playing it with a friend, singular, which is what was said in the letter about Factions from Naughty Dog. They didn't say friends. They didn't go back and edit it. It said play with a friend. And that is not a live service game in my mind. That's a co-op game. Those are different things. Now, the game could be in perpetuity. There could be gear scores. I don't know. But we don't really... I'm loath to judge anything that we haven't yet seen. It would be premature for us to have really judged the Suicide Squad game until we actually saw it. And I think the same is going to be true for this. And I have more faith that it's going to be more story driven than people are expecting it. That's my opinion anyway. Dustin, what do you think?
I disagree. I think that there will be I think you're right in that there will be a campaign that will have co-op in it, but I would expect that to be one piece of the pie, and that we will be getting some sort of live service multiplayer suite alongside that story driven campaign, because I don't think that would be... I think if it was just that, a lot of people would be disappointed because of how many people loved the original Factions. And I think there's a lot of potential, and Sony wants a piece of that pie, like very clearly. And they have teams now that can help them do it. So I don't know. I think it's maybe like I said, a mix of both.
Yeah. especially because The Last of Us is more popular now than probably ever because of the show and obviously part 1 selling like crazy. It would make sense to try and, if you're going to try and go for that pie, it makes sense to do it with an IP that's established, that people care a lot about. And hopefully Sony has the, the restraint and understanding of how important that IP is to them. And they wouldn't really, hopefully they don't over Fortnite it,
Yeah. You kill someone and do a dab.
Yeah, do a dab, do a little dance.
We will see. Again, the game comes out, let me make sure here, May 26th on PlayStation 5. So please look forward to it. We'll have much more to say about it as the time approaches. Okay, new PS3 firmware is out. Let's get into some of these new items, these new news items here. This was a weird one making the rounds. PS3 was updated 4.90 as of February 28th, so a couple of days ago from when we're recording. It's a 200 megabyte update, and we actually have a letter from James Ketchum who says, "Hey, gents, a footnote of news just dropped that a PS3 firmware upgrade has been released. Just as the Japanese had to send long retired military commanders into the South Pacific in the 60s to tell abandoned soldiers that the war was actually over and to stop killing people. Should we get Kaz Hirai to step down to the PS Now bunker and tell the coders, guys, it's really over?" I like the reference. Like it a lot. I'm always fascinated by those stories of the guys in like the Philippines and stuff that like were just killing people for decades. They just didn't believe that they would surrender. It's hysterical. But this is different, guys. Remember, we came to a conclusion, I think rightfully so, that the PlayStation 3 store should remain alive and well. And as long as you can connect it to the PlayStation Network and have some sort of vector into the PSN, it's got to remain updated. That's just the way it is. So I actually am kind of pleased to see this kind of stuff. They still care enough to keep this thing going, because they could have very easily said, when we were all complaining about the store shutting down, listen, like, we don't want to update this goddamn thing anymore. Who's using this thing? They might also see telemetry, though, that people are still using it. And just as an anecdote, I mean, my brother's, so my sister-in-law, Helene, my brother's wife, as of a couple of years ago anyway, was still using the PS3 to watch Netflix in the living room. So people are still connecting it and using it. And so maybe that's the reason. I know you're not saying this, James, but a lot of people are like, oh, things get abandoned and nothing's good. And then we're complaining that PS3 is getting updated.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. I would imagine it's security related first and foremost, because it's technically connected in some way to the main PSN, and that if you go and buy like Legend of Dragoon on PS3, then it's going to connect into your account. Like, and Sony, I'm sure, is very, very aware, or trying with, the PSN being held together with sticks and bubble gum, that they want to make sure that's secure based on some past history.
Well, you brought up Legend of Dragoon very timely, because that was the next thing I was going to talk about. The Legend of Dragoon was recently released on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, and the game was broken. It was actually soft locking during combat, depending on the things you would do in it. That has since been patched, according to our friends over at Push Square. I'm looking forward to playing that. I will probably not get to that till later in the year. Wild Arms 2 is going to be first up for me. We'll talk about the games we're playing in a little while. But yeah, Legend of Dragoon, if you were worried about it being broken, it is now fixed. So go check that out. And this is older news, but I want to add it to the record because we haven't gotten to speak to each other in a while, that Hogwarts Legacy, as of, I don't even know, 10 days ago now, surpassed 12 million copies sold in its first 2 weeks at $850 million earned. I'm sure that's over $1 billion at this point, and probably several more million copies. None of us are playing it at this point, so I'm kind of curious. Where do we? Oh, you are? Is it? It's not in your thing here.
I have too much to talk about with PSVR 2, so I have nothing new to say.
You have no. That's what I was going to ask. Is there anything new to say? I will say I'm kind of just moving away from it now. Like, I think it's good. I played it for 20 hours or so, and I'm just like, I think it's time to move on. I don't really know what's going on, and it has been a successful embarkment for me, though, back into the Harry Potter universe. I mean, it's making me want to read the books, which I'm going to do. I think when I open my pool, I'm just going to float around and read those books. And so I appreciate that, but there's just too many other games out. So even though Hogwarts is doing very well, I'm very pleased about it. It was definitely a big W for WB and Avalanche Software. Yeah, I'm not really into it anymore either. Moved on. Hufflepuff.
Revelio.
Okay.
Off on another adventure.
By the way, let's just talk about this real quick, since none of us have it in. Is anyone going to play this Wolong Fallen Dynasty game? It's getting good reviews. Comes out.
I mean, I would like to.
Yeah.
Well, when's it
Comes
come
out the day this podcast comes out. It'll come out the day this podcast goes live.
Oh, God damn it.
It's getting good reviews, but I think it's important to note that since the first Neo, if we consider this the lineage Neo, Neo 2, and now this game, each game has scored slightly lower than the previous one. And that's not including Stranger of Paradise, which is kind of in that vein. But I don't know. I'm seeing good things overall, but I don't think I'll play it.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to ask because I saw it, like Push Square gave it a 9, which I thought was interesting. Okay, just wanted to throw that out there. All right, moving on. Saw this on PCGamesN.com. The Ukrainian government wants Atomic Heart banned on Steam. And so the piece says in part, the Ukraine government says it will write an official letter to Valve, Microsoft, and Sony requesting that Atomic Heart, the new FPS game from Russian developer Munfish, be removed from digital stores in Ukraine itself, and that platform holders should consider limiting distribution in other countries. Ukraine's Ministry of Digital Affairs says that it will send the letter owning to toxicity of Atomic Heart and, quote, the potential collection of our user data information and the possibility of their transfer to third parties in Russia, end quote. Quote, and then the quote continues, quote, regarding the situation with the release of the game Atomic Heart, which has Russian roots and romanticizes communist ideology in the Soviet Union, the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine will send an official letter to Sony, Microsoft, and Valve requesting a ban on selling digital versions of the game in Ukraine. We also urge limiting the distribution of the game in other countries due to its toxicity, potential data collection of users, and the potential use of money raised from game purchases to conduct a war against Ukraine, end quote. So I'm curious what you guys think of this. Dustin, let's go to you first. This makes sense to me from some perspective because it's what I've been saying over and over again. I don't blame Ukraine and people from Ukraine. You see like a lot of their people on Sunday shows coming through asking for whatever they can ask for. I would do the same thing. Ask, request, rabble rouse and get what you want as best you can. But there is a limit to your power. And so while I feel like obviously you don't want to sell the game in Ukraine, I'm surprised that that's even an issue. I feel like you have no say over where what we buy, sell, and who we do business with the rest of the world. And I'm really against claiming that a game about the Soviet Union is glorifying the Soviet Union, that a game about communism is glorifying communism. I just totally reject that out of hand completely. And so anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like what's weird to me about this is that it's kind of too late in that the game is already out and it has sold its main batch of copies, I would assume. Obviously, they'll have more sales along the way, but it's like, okay, well, let's say you do get it blocked from Steam, then you also need to go knock on Microsoft Store to get it off of Game Pass specifically I don't know if Game Pass is in Ukraine, honestly. So maybe they would have to do that, but also either way, their storefront, PlayStation storefront. And then it also brings up the question. It's like, okay, well, this is the big Russian game of the moment. What about all the other Russian games on Steam? Do those don't matter? Are those not going to collect data either? It just seems like a bit cherry picking, in my opinion. And I get it. Like it's not normal that we have a big Russian made game that's about Russian things, but it just seems too late. I would say there are more important things to put efforts into when you're at war, but that's just me.
I agree. Chris, you have anything you want to
add? No, I'd say I agree with pretty much everything that Dustin said, but I also am playing Atomic Heart, so I'll talk a little bit about it when we get to that part of the show.
Okay, cool.
I have a lot to say.
Yeah, I actually wish I maybe put that in there. It would have made it a little bit more sense. I'll save your Atomic Heart conversation.
I forgot. I forgot that I was playing.
Oh, okay. Oh, you added it.
Don't worry. Yeah, I had to add it.
Yeah, people have been writing in about that. And yeah, we'll talk about the game itself. I think Ukraine is clearly the victim in this situation. And I don't blame them for asking for whatever they want. But I do think that in terms of its expectations, it should really be tempered. I mean, apropos of nothing, I saw Zelensky a few days ago talking about how NATO is going to have to send its sons to fight and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, man, I don't think so, buddy. So I think you need to, I have no problem with you saying and asking for whatever you want, but there's going to be a severe limit on what you're actually going to get. And one of those things you're not going to get is like the cleansing of Russian products from our markets, as if it's their fault that this is happening. Doesn't remove your victim status. It doesn't say that what's happening is right. I just think it's more multipolar than that. And
Yeah.
So I'm concerned about that kind of totalitarian slant. Like, don't sell Russian things. That's something. Nah, we have no beef with them right now. Like in that regard, and most of the world doesn't. And so let's keep isolated things isolated and not get too carried away. All right, a couple more pieces of news here. This one comes from Kotaku, who just wrote that EA laid off over 200 Apex Legends testers just totally randomly. These guys work out of their Louisiana studio, which is a small satellite studio that's actually at the University of Louisiana, I want to say. And I was wondering, Chris, what's the feel on Apex Legends right now? Is this say anything about that game? Because I know they canceled some mobile stuff, both in Battlefield and in Apex Legends. And
Yeah.
I still see Apex Legends charting, but getting rid of your testers is a sign that maybe there's going to be some shifts to this game coming up.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to happen, especially with a live service game, which kind of requires a lot of testing constantly because there's always new shit theoretically in the pipeline being worked on. So to have that many testers laid off doesn't bode well, but I also can't fathom a reality where Apex Legends is struggling because it's one of the top, if not, it's up there. It's the top three. It beats. It's competing with Fortnite pretty consistently. I don't know if they're on the same echelon, but it might be like a PewDiePie versus like the second most subscribed channel situation where like
Right.
Fortnite's just so far ahead, but like they're far behind, but still ahead of like most people. I don't really know, but I know a lot of people who play Apex and they still play it, and I don't know. It seems weird that they don't give off the vibe that they're struggling, or that's not the interpretation of the community, or even the outside looking in perspective. It's bizarre. Although that canceled mobile thing is kind of interesting from a broader EA perspective.
Yeah, they shut that studio down. They bought. I didn't realize that they bought that studio only like a few years ago and then just shut them down, which is very EA, but they haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
Dustin, what were you going to say?
Yeah.
It's worth pointing out, I just looked up on Steam charts. Last month was the all-time peak of Apex Legends users on Steam with 624,000 players.
So what's your read on this?
I don't know. That's because I kind of had a feeling based on what Chris was that brought up the mobile game, thought, is Apex in trouble? So, but clearly it's not. It seems like it's doing better than ever. So
Yeah,
maybe this is just a reshuffling, a reorganization. Maybe they're you said this was a QA team. Was this an internal QA team?
No, it's actually, I was going to read this. So actually they're a contracted team, but this is part of what makes it weird to me, because this is what EA said, quote, as part of our ongoing global strategy, we are expanding the distribution of our Apex Legends testing team and ending testing execution that's been concentrated in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, impacting services provided by our third-party provider. Our global team, inclusive of remote playtesters across the U.S., enables us to increase the hours per week we're able to test and optimize the game, and reflects a commitment to understand and better serve our growing community around the world, end quote. That's totally fine with me, and I don't blame them for getting rid of their footprint. Again, they are at the University of Louisiana, I'm pretty sure, at Baton Rouge, and they're just renting space there. So I don't mind them getting rid of that. Or I'm wondering why lay people off. If you're going to a remote QA posture, why wouldn't you offer these experienced QA workers the ability, at least some of them, to go do that? It just seems strange to me to get rid of 200 heads. And what I imagine might be happening is maybe getting rid of that contract work and then going to kind of circumvent that and then go to the individuals themselves and hire them internally, which might not have been possible under their old contracts. But I don't know. 60-day severance is what they've been provided, so pretty good. And hopefully they'll be able to be okay. But I was wondering what this meant for Apex Legends, and it seems like nothing's wrong. So we're going to have to glean the information over time. Okay. Finally, I just added this. I thought it was funny. Yuji Naka, father of Sonic, admits guilt in Square Enix insider trading case. This is by our friends over at Video Games Chronicle, and it says, as reported by NHK, Naka has been standing trial at Tokyo District Court, and when presented with his charges, admitted that there was, quote, no doubt, end quote, he had done what he was being accused of. Naka is charged with violating Japan's Financial Instruments and Exchange Act by illegally buying shares based on inside information. And it seems like he might have made about $146,000 in the scheme. So not even that much money for your insider. I mean, it's very modest insider trading that would probably keep you off the radar for a lot of people. So he just got caught. But
so
Yuji, I wonder what's going to happen to him. Probably not going to go to prison.
Dude,
No.
I love they keep using the photo of him in the Balin hat.
Yeah, it's awesome.
For this. It's so good.
Poor
What if
Yuji.
he's like, damn, I never should have wore the hat. Never should.
Yeah, I wonder how he feels because like he's kind of like he lost his Sega bona fides, right? He fucked up at Square Enix. Then there was like some weird lawsuits there. Then he gets nailed for insider trading. Pretty huge fall from grace. Not a huge surprise by someone that was responsible for Sonic, though.
Yeah, you'd think the creator of Sonic would be better at outrunning the law.
Got to go fast. All right, my friends. Let's get into what we're playing. How do I want to do this? Chris, let's go to you first, actually. You're playing Atomic Heart and Destiny 2 Lightfall. I'm interested to hear about both of these, and then we'll talk about PSVR 2. Your PSVR 2 was stolen, right?
Well, it said it was delivered, and I got home from Texas, and it wasn't there, and I asked some neighbors about it. They never saw a package, which you know, like, I don't know how much I trust these people, but I've been in correspondence. There's another one on its way.
Oh, good.
Is what I was told.
Oh, good. That's good. So they didn't give you any problems ultimately.
No. It wasn't, which is awesome. I really appreciate that. But anyway, yeah. So I haven't been able to fuck around with PSVR 2 quite as much as the other guys have. But I have been playing Atomic Heart and I've been playing Destiny 2. There's a lot to say about both of these. Atomic Heart, I played for about 5 hours, and I can't even express to you how upset this game made me. Like, it is so upsetting, largely because what an amazing world design. Like, what amazing art design going on here. Like, what great world building. You know, it really reminds me of BioShock and you know these games, these tentpole kind of experiential games that we love to praise. And then the main character opens his mouth and speaks, and everything is ruined. It's honestly amazing. They could have done so much less work and ended up with a far, far better game if they just had the protagonist not say a damn thing. Or just, that's the best case scenario. You know, they could have written it a little bit differently. They could have, like, not Marvel. Like, it is a Marvel movie, is what it feels like sometimes. Like, this main, but like edgy. Almost like if Deadpool was written by, like, the Kevin Feige team. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
like, it's that kind of, like, the overwrought kind of snarky quips, but, like, we can say fuck sometimes, and, like, oh, there's a horny robot. Isn't that funny? And it's like, yeah, it would be if my main guy would just shut the fuck up and just allow me to, like, figure things out. Because it goes beyond just giving you the answers to puzzles. Like, that's annoying in you know, Horizon and God of War and things like that, where, like, NPCs will point out the solution to a puzzle before you even have to think about it. The game just doesn't shut up. And the voice acting's horrible in English anyway. I tried to switch it to Russian.
I heard the Russian VO is really good, but we wouldn't know that.
The Russian VO is really good, but it's really just because I don't know what good or bad Russian VO sounds like.
Right.
So, like, and also it's the same script. It's the same horrible script.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so sad because it's like, what a cool world, what, like, awesome enemy style. Like, the style of it is so cool. And they just wrote it into the ground. And it's like, it's just so disappointing. And it would be forgivable if the game played particularly well. Like, if the FPS combat and the melee combat was, you know, if the melee combat felt a little bit like Dying Light, or if the FPS combat felt a little bit like Far Cry, like, it would be a lot more, I don't know, there would be at least something to pull you forward, but the FOV is locked to, like, a really narrow field of view, and the melee doesn't feel right, and some guns feel fine. It's a really huge disappointment for me. Like, I'm really bummed about it personally, because it's such a good art design, and it's so visually striking. It feels like a crime that it's written this bad. Like, it really is that. It's like they threw Duke Nukem in BioShock. Is what it feels like. It's so horrible. I know Dustin played a little bit of it. Like, am I right?
Yeah. Well, we talked about it a bit in Houston together, and we were like thinking it's so funny that he talks to his, like, glove or something. It's like the same. I mean, I don't know, the same, but it's like Forspoken in a way, where
Yeah.
he's like talking to this glove and be like, "Shut up, glove." It's like, bro,
It's
stop,
so bad.
please.
And it's worse than Forspoken, in my opinion. Like, the writing is worse than Forspoken, in my opinion, because Forspoken's writing doesn't betray something special. You know,
Yeah.
like Forspoken is written like garbage, but it's also like, you know, it's a fairly standard game. Like, it's a fairly standard world. The world that Forspoken takes place in isn't particularly it isn't particularly inspiring or interesting. Right. But like Atomic Heart's world is interesting until you learn about it from the characters in it. And that's so much worse because it's like, you're so close. You're so close to having something incredible, and you just shot yourself in the foot every second for like 5 hours straight. And I was like, I can't do it. I dropped it pretty quick. I was like, I can't do this. So that's Atomic Heart. Really bummed about it.
Were you, by the way, real quick here, were you here when I was talking about PowerPix's thing about Atomic Heart? Were you here for that?
I don't think so. I think that might have been
so just you'll find this interesting that PowerPix, like the trophy guide website, the like popular trophy guide website, basically canceled their trophy guide because they were like, this game is a fucking mess. And they never have done that ever. I've never seen them say anything about a game or whatever. And so I was telling Dustin in the audience, that's basically like Jesus telling me a game's bad. Like someone so closely aligned with your tastes as far as what you're looking for in a game, that when I was like, they were like, this game is an unorganized mess. The maps are horrible. It doesn't track anything right. I was like, oh, you're speaking my language. I'm not playing this. And that was before any of the stuff about the voice acting and the character and this and that came out. So it is a disappointment from that regard, because I've never been more positive in my life that a game is not for me than this, just based on that PowerPix comment. Yeah. Because they literally they never break character ever. It's so funny, dude. I'll send it to you. It's their trophy reveal list, and then they write in the comments like the guide's canceled, and then they just like rip into it. And they did it before the embargo too, which was interesting. So that really spoke to me. Yeah, and I'm certainly gonna pass on it, I think.
Yeah. So that's my experience with Atomic Heart. I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe if you can get it for super super cheap if you're super curious, but not really worth it in my view. And so Destiny 2 is the other thing. Lightfall just came out. I finished the campaign. There's a lot to say about this. I know I'm the resident Destiny guy. So this might sound like a lot of jargon.
I'm so curious, dude. Before we started recording, we were waiting for Colin. I was like, dude, I need to ask you about Destiny, but I need to wait till the show because I'm seeing so many.
I've heard mixed things about it.
Personally. Yeah, mixed things.
Well, so I think an interesting way to format this is, if you have a question specifically in mind about Destiny, what would it be? So that I can answer it and kind of like jump off it in some way.
What is the question? Well,
like, because you said you wanted to ask me about Destiny. Like, did you have like something specific in mind, or like just generally?
Well, it's just general about Lightfall, because I think that this was, really, really hyped up. They're coming off the success of Witch Queen.
Witch Queen.
And then I'm seeing mainly about it being story related stuff, and that the seasonal content is better than the story, which is really interesting. And it's even someone on our Discord, well, what they said, I can't remember what they said, but I was like, that sounds kind of like Destiny 1 storytelling.
It's bizarre. So Witch Queen came out last year and was awesome. Like the Witch Queen campaign is fantastic. It's great narratively. There's like a lot of twists. You understand what's happening. Motivations are clear. They explain like what's going on, and you understand what's going on by the end. There's also just like a great semblance of progression. The levels are really well done. There's like set pieces. The legendary difficulty is like really, really fine tuned. It feels perfect to play. It's a fantastic expansion. If people are curious about Destiny, I would still kind of recommend getting into it, at least for the Witch Queen, because it is really that good. So this being the follow-up and theoretically the Infinity War to Endgame to the Infinity War to Destiny's Endgame, which is Endgame's like theoretically next year. There's a lot of hype going into this because it's kind of like the beginning of the end. And that's even kind of the general marketing behind it. It's like, okay, you're going to find out who this main antagonist is, what their motivations are, what they're going to do. And some cool stuff happens through the story, but none of it's fucking explained at all. Like there's like this big MacGuffin where it's like they're after the witness is after the veil or whatever, and you have to go get the veil, and like
I keep
there's
hearing
so many,
about this veil.
yeah, and there's so
and no
many
one can explain what it is.
No, all the characters in the campaign are like, yes, the veil. Like everybody in the campaign pretends like they understand what it is. You don't know what it is, and you feel like it's almost like you feel like an idiot for asking. So you kind of like, it's almost like the game gaslights you into thinking you're just dumb for not knowing what this thing is, even though they've never explained it ever. And then the end just sort of happens like midway through the campaign. Nothing is explained. It's even more confusing. It's so weird. Like the story of it is such a drastic step down that I actually can't believe it. Like it really is jarring in that respect. But what's so frustrating about that is the expansion overall is really good. Like the new subclass is awesome. The new gameplay changes are really, really cool. The new Neptune City is dope as hell. Like everything else, it's almost like the reverse of the Witch Queen, where the Witch Queen had a great story. Like it was fantastic. It was like really well designed, really well tuned, really well paced, really well written, really great characters, really great interactions. And then kind of the seasonal content was kind of like hit and miss for a while. But that was fine because the story was so engaging. And it was like, oh, say, okay, we got that good story, whatever. Like I'm into it. The game still plays really well. So I'm into it. Whereas this feels like, wow, I'm having a lot of fun playing Destiny. Like this is so much fun. This grapple hook shit is dope.
That looks so cool.
Like the physics of it are so fun. And like the way it plays into combat, having loadouts finally that you can like preset different loadouts for like different things. There's like new UI elements that I think are fantastic. There's new ranking systems. It's really cool. But then it's wrapped around this overall campaign that feels like such a drastic step backward that it leaves the great parts of the expansion feeling really underwhelming in comparison, even though the sum of the changes are actually technically better than what we had before because it's not tied to a great story. And I think this really just kind of reinforces how important a great story is to really anything. I think it's one of the reasons why even Bungie's original trilogy is so revered. It's not only because it was fun to play and really, really, you know, it's not just because Halo 1 through 3 were fun to play and they were like really, really great games in their own right. It's that trilogy is awesome. Like narratively, especially for the time, like it's nuts. So I don't know. It's just I'm disappointed, but at the same time, I'm having so much fun. It's such a weird, it's a weird situation. Live service games are bizarre like that. But yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. It's really, really messy narrative, not balanced. Like me and my friend Paul were going through it, and we were like, this feels. He was talking through the mic. He was like, "Look, man, I like a challenge, but this feels like they're fucking us." There's specifically this one level, and it's a really cool combat encounter because it's like this one. You're in a room, and then there's this revolving laser wall, and you have to fight, but still avoid the wall. So it's like you're kind of like pausing and like fighting, and then they just keep spawning enemies in to a point where it feels like I can't even. Like, I don't even know what's happening. Like, I'm on fire in the middle of the air and like nothing's around me. And I don't know what's doing this to me. It's almost like some alien is like giving you psychic damage just from like showing you like a scary picture or something. It's like, it's gross.
Yeah.
But it's weird. It's still so fun though. That's what's so frustrating about it. But
right.
Yeah, that's the long and short of it, basically.
I'm looking on Steam right now. It has mostly negative reviews. The top review says, at this point, Bungie should just hand the story writing over to ChatGPT. Probably would have done a better job. Oof.
Yeah, the story is insane. I really have no fucking... There's all these like terms and there's a lot of like weird terms in Destiny that like you kind of like, all right, yeah, Vex and Cabal and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, I get it. I've been playing for a while. But then they're like, oh, we have to start up the Cloud arc. And you're like, what is this? And it's never explained. The Veil, never explained. None of it. And every character speaks in riddles. So fucking annoying. Really bad story. Like crazy.
What's the future of Destiny beyond this, have they said?
There's one final. I have a sneaking suspicion that this is a filler. Because what I've noticed too is that every expansion that introduces a new subclass, this time it's Strand. The last one was Beyond Light with Stasis. Those tend to be the weaker ones, and the ones that precede the bigger ones, which is weird. Like, I don't know why that cadence is clear, but it's clearly there. There is the final Shape expansion, which is next year, presumably around the same time, February. And so that's supposed to be like the end. And that's probably where a lot of this stuff is going to. And honestly, like, a lot of this bad writing might come down to the fact that it's a live service game and they have to like trickle out like, oh, well, what does the veil mean? They'll probably trickle that out during the seasons or whatever. Like, it's like, okay, so season, like, you know, the second season of this new expansion is going to have like some answers about that. And I get
$10 season to pay for after the expansion.
Yeah. And I understand it, whatever. It's like, it keeps people hooked, but I think the main issue is that the last campaign didn't need that. You know what I mean? Like, the last campaign was self-contained. It was well written. And when it was over, you still had seasonal stuff. And so it's just frustrating to know that they can do something amazing with seasonal content and a great story. And at this time, they just didn't do that. It comes across as more disappointing than it would if Witch Queen didn't come out beforehand. And that's, I don't know. I'm still playing the shit out of it because it is still very, very fun. Probably technically more fun than I've had in a while with Destiny. It just sucks that the narrative just didn't land this time.
All right, let's talk about VR2.
Yep.
Kuhn wrote into us and said, to my sneaky virtual Texan Rons, I'm endlessly curious to hear about your early dalliances with the PSVR 2. Colin mentioned last week that he wants to know how we're enjoying it, but we're all up in the VR chat on Discord about it. We want to know about you. Lots of complaints and concerns online regarding blurriness, motion sickness, finding the sweet spot, and the list goes on. Oh. But I personally found that with a little patience, this thing is really something special. One thing I point out is that although it allows room for the user to wear glasses, I don't find it as an immersive unless I put in contacts. The glasses and VR lenses run the risk of scratching each other, and the front plate needs to be further away from your eyes, which results in a blurrier image, smaller peripheral view, etc. Anyway, what do you guys think? Fire away. Can't wait to hear your takes. Dustin, PSVR 2. So ours both came before we left for Houston, but I just left mine in the box. I think you might have done the same. I just felt like it was not worth it. So when I got back the next, on Saturday and Sunday, I messed with it and, put it together and started messing with it. So I have quite a bit to say about it, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
I have quite a bit to say as well. I actually, when I was thinking about it, I have so much to say that I pulled a Colin, printed out a piece of paper with some thoughts.
Very good.
So here's the important things. Let's talk about the headset first. And then Colin, we can kind of start there and then talk about some games. Comfort, really good. Exactly what you'd expect from PSVR. In fact, it reminded me how good they are at that, coming from the Quest 2. That Halo design that you can kind of bring it in and out is really good. And the other thing too, I don't know, Colin, what do you think about the setup of this thing? Just like plug it in, scans your room, you get your floor space. Just compared to the PSVR 1, where it feels like, you got to basically it's like a small day job to make sure this thing is set up right. Just perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it was cool. The setup felt very futuristic to me in some sense. Like using your eye tracking and like looking around and it making the scan lines all around you and then remembering it. There's a part where it tells you to touch the floor to make sure that the floor is where it's supposed to be, and it is where it's supposed to be, and it's just so strange that it knows that. And it was very easy and much less cumbersome than the ridiculous PSVR setup that was just intolerable, in my opinion, from almost the very beginning.
Two things that stood out to me that I didn't hear in reviews that I think are really important quality of life updates to the headset is that, first of all, I think you could call it a gasket, like the rubbery parts on the side. This one, when you push it in, you're going to block out all light, or at least I do for my face. Yeah. And I remember that being kind of annoying in other VR headsets where you feel like you got to smush it so far against your face in order to block out everything. This one, absolutely perfect at that. I love that. The other thing too, particularly this was a problem with the original PSVR, is that when I would play it in the winter and I keep my house relatively cool, I would fog up the lenses constantly. It's always fogging up. Even if I wasn't like playing an active game like Beat Saber or something like that, I would fog them up. This one, if you watch the teardown and from PlayStation, has a very little fan in it that keeps air flowing. You don't feel it at all, but I never have had it fog up on me at all. And like I said, that was a huge, huge issue for me with the last one. Tracking, which also I think is actually tracking is probably was the number one issue with PSVR. And I pretty much have had no issues with any kind of tracking at all. I've had a few moments in games where I'll have like a brief jump, but I know that there's a setting in the menu where you can change something on your TV where it makes it almost like a cropped box, and that's supposed to improve your tracking even more. I haven't really felt the need to turn that on because of my problems have been so little when it comes to that. But just man, Colin, I'm sure you remember with the PSVR 1 and the light, it like had this feeling of like you were slightly moving in and out at all times. It was horrible. It's so much better now.
Yeah, it's definitely better. What's your experience with the blurriness?
Yeah, so that's
and the sweet spot.
Yes, the sweet spot, pretty narrow. You know, you might have a tough time finding the sweet spot, if you know what I'm saying. You got to make sure it's perfectly set on your head. And it's a little more narrow than I think I've found in other headsets of this caliber, but I feel like it was more of a problem day one. Now that I've had more time, I've really figured out how to like set it on my head. Like I have to set it a little higher than I would expect it. And you also want to make sure you like really tighten it and lock it in. But I don't know. To me, once you get used to it, like I said, I don't feel like it's as much of a problem. But Colin, I know I saw you in Discord talking that you felt like you were finding it to be a bit more blurry than you expected.
Yeah. So when I first used it, I used it in my living room, and I guess I was just kind of enamored with it. So I wasn't really paying too close attention to like the finer details of it. So I don't know exactly the way it was the first time I used it, but I ultimately ended up bringing it upstairs in my house to our loft area where we have another TV and a set of consoles, because when we never sit up there, but it's a wide open space. And I think my dogs were getting freaked out by me using the VR headset around them. And it was annoying, you know, how it creates that net around you, but it creates it where there's any sort of barrier at all from a 90-degree angle, like perpendicular to you. So I was standing behind, or if you're sitting in your chair and you drop your hand below the arc of the chair, it thinks you're running into something and stuff like that. It's really annoying. So I went upstairs and got all the space. But at that point, I started to realize I don't think I can see clearly in this. And I started like really paying attention to it and playing with it. Now, when you look at your hand in Horizon, you see the green feathers right on your hand that are the health. Do you see those clearly?
Depends on where they're at on the screen. Like,
can you ever get them close to you and see them clearly? Because I can't. Right? Like I can't find the sweet spot. Like it's always a little bit blurry for me, I think. And I'm not sure if that's just the way it is, or if this is what is frustrating to me about virtual reality technology is I'm not sure if I'm seeing it the way it's supposed to be seen. And you can't really tell someone if they are or not. How the hell would you know?
Right.
I mean, if we're all sitting at a 1080p TV or a 4K TV, we all know what we're getting. We're all seeing the same exact thing. You might not interpret it the same, but you are seeing the same exact thing. And with this, it's just unknown. And that's what's so frustrating to me. So I started Googling around about it and finding, as you said, that it seems like a lot of people are having problems with this blurriness issue. And so it makes me feel like it's not just me. Like if I'm holding the hand to look at my feathers on my arm, my hand to see my health, that should be clear at some point, but it's not clear. I can read it, but it's not clear. It's not even in 720, you know?
Mm-hmm. Do you have the eye tracking on?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Because I know that I've seen, at least with GT7, if you don't have the eye tracking on, then it just focuses the rendering in the center of the screen all the time. But yeah, I'm not sure about that. I know that definitely anything on more of the outskirts of where the screens are is definitely going to just not be as in focus. And
right, but I guess the point I'm making
closer.
Right, the point I'm making is that I can't get anything to really, like, you know, that feeling when you focus on something and you're like almost there, but you're not quite there. That's like the best I can get. If I focus on like what's in front of me, if there's like a pile of wood in front of me and I just focus on it, I can't quite make it out in crispness. I know what it is. I can see it. It's there, but it's. And so when I move the headset around, this is what I'm saying. I don't know if my headset's broken. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe it is. Or if I just can't get it done, or if this is the way Horizon's really supposed to look. it's really stunning. Like it's really beautiful. Like what I especially loved about, and I'll talk a little bit about Horizon here because that's the only game I played on VR so far. Is I'm especially enamored with talking to people and like standing there and like the person's just right there and you almost feel like you're literally having a conversation with them or talking to them in some way. It's very cool, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm seeing it the right way, and that's frustrating to me, and it makes me not want to play it. Yeah, to be honest. I know I probably have to sit there and really give it some more time and figure it out, but when you have this thing in your mind where maybe it's broken, maybe something's wrong, maybe the setting's not quite right, I don't know. It's just I'm not sophisticated enough to know, and I actually don't think many people are. So that's my big problem with it. It's really cool, but it's expensive, and it should work better than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that. I was gonna for me, it's just been kind of like dialing in as I said, but I don't think you're alone in that I've seen, at least particularly on the PSVR subreddit, a lot of people having those same types of questions and stuff like that. So I think there's definitely something to be said about that for sure. The other main things that I just want to say real quick about it is that I think the cord is a little too short. Like I wish the cord was like a little bit longer, which I understand that you can get an extension cable up to a certain amount and it will work. It's a little short though. And you're right, dude, the boundary. So I find that the boundary, when I set it up for standing, is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But the sitting boundary is just it's too small. You can even set it to be a little less sensitive to when it shows up, and it's still too small.
Yeah, and then you constantly see the netting around you when that happens. So like it's just immersion breaking.
Yeah, so that's annoying. But the other thing I guess worth saying too is just the cinematic mode. I know a lot of people have had questions about that since they've been it's a 4K resolution and stuff like that on your screens. And yeah, it definitely looks way better than the last PSVR when it comes to resolution, for sure. But I think it's worth, if you're thinking about buying one of these, keeping your expectations in check on how sharp it is going to really be. It is sharp. Like I said, it looks way better than the last one, but you're not going to put this thing on and want to play every game, your 2D games, your normal games in it. It's definitely going to take a bit of a hit. But with that being said, they at least went the extra mile, and you can put it, your 120 FPS games, you can play in 120 FPS in the headset in cinematic mode, which is pretty cool. If you have an older TV that can't do that, then this could be an option for some of those games, which is pretty neat if you ask me. But overall, I gotta say, I'm very impressed with the hardware overall. It's I think that it's so much more intuitive than the last one. The eye tracking in particular, I think, is so freaking cool. When you do the setup, it does this thing where you kind of like look at these different like diamonds in a circle and you're like, wow, how does that even work? And then when you play Horizon, there's a mode where you can turn on the eye tracking to select different things in the menu. And at first it was somewhat off-putting because I was trying to select something with my hand like you normally do with a thumbstick, but I was also looking around. And then once you realize what's happening and click that over in your brain, it's so intuitive to just try to find which setting you're trying to change or go to in a menu. It's like, oh, I'm looking at it. I just press the button and it works. The foveated rendering aspect too, I think is really, really neat and cool. When Ben was here and my friend Brandon, and I was showing them GT, and we were playing this. I was having them in the VR showroom for cars. And be like, okay, look at the top left corner of the screen for the person in the headset. And we were looking on the TV, and you could see that everything else was getting really, really low res. And then you look back at the car and you could see it move with their eyes from the share screen. And what's so crazy is that when you're in the game, you never notice that. It is so quick and so fast. You can't try to trick it and try to see the low res parts. It's really, really neat. So yeah, overall, I mean, GT7 is a lot of people. I think that's kind of like the sleeper hit of the launch overall. The fact that you can play the whole game. It's totally weird when you're playing and you're driving around, even if you're using a DualSense and you're not using the wheel. I found myself like leaning into turns And then I'm not very good at GT7. So there's a couple moments where I'm like about to hit the barrier. And you practically you feel like you need to brace yourself when that happens. It is totally crazy. And it almost makes me want to get a racing wheel, even though I know that it's just like a little obsession in my brain right now, but it's really cool. The other game I just want to mention real quick, I'll skip this other stuff since I've talked a lot, but
no, you can say whatever you want. I mean, go on.
Yeah, dude, Village. Colin, you gotta boot up Village at some point, even if you don't play the whole game. Village is really neat. It's shocking, actually, because the first on Resident Evil 7 was kind of a janky way that they did it, but it made sense. I think a lot of it was you played with the DualShock, but you pointed with your head and stuff like that. This is so much more than that. This is a full-blown, maybe not full-blown, but in many ways a very, very good conversion where you'll have the shotgun and you need to grab it with your other hand and you need to pump the shotgun and then you need to grab your shells from your waist and load them in. It's so freaking cool. And then when you have a pistol, which I know this isn't new for VR games, but it's just really well implemented into a standard AAA game. When you have a pistol, you'll have better aim if you use your other hand to brace. Like if you were actually shooting a pistol or something like that, you got to look down the sight with the sniper rifle. And the sense of VR presence in Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 8 is so insane. It's going to be tough because I've only played up to the intro part where you're in the village and you have to fight the different monsters and stuff like that. I've not gotten to the castle yet, but even just in that beginning part where you're walking around in the forest in the dark, because of the OLED screen, it feels very dark and you can pull out a flashlight and look around. I am probably going to have a lot of trouble playing this game later because it's just so much more real when it's in VR. Even if you know what's going to happen, there's the part at the beginning where you fall into the basement and there's dead bodies everywhere. It really freaked me the fuck out because there's a dead body, like a dead guy's face, just like a foot away. And it's really, I can't understate it enough how impressed I am with it. I will say, little janky on the cutscenes where there's parts where Ethan is being dragged. And so you're standing there in, your real life body and your head is supposed to be Ethan's head and it's being dragged on the floor. And it's very weird, but it's understandable since it's not a true VR game. To my understanding, there's a way that you can make those cutscenes like a normal 2D cutscene if you want, but it's awesome. It's very, very cool. And it's a totally free upgrade. And I believe there's a demo also if you want to check that out. So the last thing, Tetris Effect Connected. If you haven't played Tetris Effect Connected, what the fuck are you doing? Check this game out, even if you don't have VR, but in PSVR 2, it really, really is special. The inky OLED blacks, and it's like bright and colorful. It's worth the $10 upgrade for sure. I can't recommend it enough. But Colin, I wanted to ask you, I mean, we talked about some of the technical aspects, but how are you finding Horizon Call of the Mountain overall, since that's kind of the main game that you've dug into? Yeah,
it's the only game I've played so far because I kind of resent having to play it or buy another game to see if this thing actually works or not, or if it's just going to be blurry for me forever, or if my inability to find the sweet spot. It could be me, could be the game, could be, I don't know, it could be a bunch of different things. But honestly, what it reminds me of, and I don't mean this really as an insult, it reminds me of Link's crossbow training on Wii, which was a game I actually liked. And it's just a relaxing kind of jaunt. You're going through, doing a little motion to shoot things, kind of like you're playing Sports Champions, almost back on the original PlayStation Move in 2010. So nothing too crazy there. I thought the fighting the robots is really fun. I think you don't fight very often in the game. At least I haven't yet. I've played it for a few hours, perhaps. You kind of have these events where you fight and you usually take a few of the machines on at a time at once. The other thing I'll say is the climbing is pretty awesome just because I was definitely like shaking, like steadying myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Subconsciously not trying to do that. And I think that's pretty interesting too. So there's something there about the scale. I love going up to the different cliffs and looking over them. I think the intro sequence, which I won't spoil for anyone, is very immersive and very, very good. And was really an impressive way to begin the game. And I'll say about the controllers too. I think the controllers are cool. I'm a little confused by them. I have a hard time picking them up sometimes. And you know, like a child like putting the different shaped blocks into the shapes, like the star into the star and the square into the square and all that. That's like me trying to put these things on the fucking charging station. I'm like I'm like moving them all which way. I'm just not very good with the spatial shit. They're very strange controllers, but they're comfortable and they're light, maybe almost a little too light, in fact. And I will say, when I was playing and climbing and stuff, I was feeling pretty tired, you know, doing a lot of the motions and stuff like that. So it's a cool piece of kit. I'm just not entirely sure if it's working right or if I'm getting the most out of it right now. So I need to spend more time with it. I just have not had the opportunity to do so.
I will say, Colin, I think of the 5 games that I've dipped my feet into so far, Call of the Mountain is my least favorite in that it serves what it's supposed to be. It's a game that they sold as a pack-in. So in some ways it kind of leans into some, I don't know, like, oh, this is cool in VR. You can pick up the tambourine and shake it. You can paint stuff on the wall. Like, it has like these little gimmicky moments, which I like those things. And I think it's cool how I think that in some of the battles, they did a good job translating Horizon combat into VR in a way that makes sense and isn't going to make people sick if this is the first game that you're playing in VR. Specifically with some of the battles, what they do is that they make it so you're on a track. Like, you can't fully move around when you're fighting a character, which is good because it kind of like already sets up your spacing. So you'll be like moving left and right, and you can dodge left and right, and then you can pick like different arrows, just like the game. You can craft different arrows. It really is cool. They definitely make it easier to shoot properly. Like, there's some kind of not like an auto aim, but you don't have to be super accurate, which is a good thing. But it's a neat little game. But if you're experienced with a lot of other VR games, then it's not necessarily gonna blow your mind or anything like that. Some of the climbing stuff, I was like, okay, enough climbing. I'm good climbing for now, but we'll see. I'm still pretty early in it overall as well. But
when I climb, I often do the thing where, first of all, pressing the start button or options button to center yourself is really cool. I mean, that's nothing new really, but I often also push myself away from the wall to like give myself more space. And the game doesn't really let you kill yourself in certain ways. So like, you can't really freak yourself out too much. Like, you can let go and die that way. But I tried many times to like walk off a cliff or jump off a cliff and stuff like that. And you just can't do it. Right. Because I feel like that would be really horrifying to see.
Yeah.
With that level of realism.
There's a lot more games I want to play, though. I've been hearing a lot about this kayak VR game, which doesn't sound all that appealing to me, but I've heard that it has like photorealistic, well, not quite, but you know what I mean? More along those lines graphics where you're just kind of chilling out in a kayak. Pavlov is supposed to be a really good VR, like first-person shooter that is really fun multiplayer, but there's just too much. I'm just looking at the stuff and I'm like, man, I'm good for now. I am eating well. And I've been having a great time. I made a mistake, though, Colin. I did not buy the charging station for the controllers.
Oh, interesting.
And I instantly regretted it. And I bought it now. Because charging those individually and just like plugging them in and then letting them go, I'm like, no, can't do this. I should have.
Yeah, I knew that was going to drive
it with it.
Yeah, I knew that was going to drive me nuts. I knew I couldn't do it.
Yeah, that
way. But yeah, you should see me trying to put these things on the dock, like just literally 10 IQ at the most. All right. So that's PSVR for now. We'll have more to say about that in the weeks to come, especially as Chris gets his unit as well. The only other game I'm playing right now that I want to talk about is the new Innie Creates game, Grim Guardians Demon Purge, which came out just a few days ago. This is related in some way to the Galgun franchise, which I'm not a huge fan of, but you don't need to be connected to those at all. Innie Creates is a really wonderful Japanese old school pixel art developer, made Mega Man 9, made Mega Man 10, does the Azure Striker games and a bunch of other stuff, the old Mega Man Zero games. And they're really good. Bloodstained, obviously. Both the 2D and 2.5D stuff. They did Mighty Number 9, which is not very good. So everyone misses once in a while. But I really like this game. It's cute. I like the characters. One, you fight with these two female characters from this, so just like Galgun from this like this like academy that they all go to. One uses like an Uzi and the other uses origami to fight, which is kind of cool. And you switch between them actively with the R2 button. And then they each have a series of sub weapons that Castlevania like sub weapons that you use. The cool mechanic here is that you switch between them, and when one dies, you get sent back to the checkpoint, but the body is still there. So if you can get to the body and revive it before you die again, then you save your life and you don't use a life. And you gather lives by gathering these items called pride. And you get like 100 pride, 500 pride, 1,000 pride, depending on what you're finding. Very similar to maybe the point bags in Castlevania games. It's not extraordinarily good. It's non-linear. It's a little bit obviously perverse. I think you have to. I was reading about this because there's a trophy for collecting all of the panties in the game, and I'm like, what is this? I'm not even seeing any of this in the game at all. I'm on the last level, and I've not encountered any collectible panties yet. And what I was reading was that it's kind of like an ode to Castlevania 2. In Castlevania 2, you have to revive. It's actually an awesome story, and it's why I think it should be remade at some point. You in the first Castlevania, you kill Dracula, but the curse doesn't. The curse sticks. So what you have to do is go and they spread Dracula's body parts around so that he couldn't get revived again. You have to go collect all the body parts and revive him yourself, and then kill him again with the proper weaponry or whatever. And this apparently is an ode to that, where you have to collect all of the panties in one run, and then you get like a special ending in this special thing. So we'll see what happens there. But I just like supporting indie creates. I like 2D games like this. I think it's really beautiful. There, I'll share some screenshots at some point on Discord that I've been taking on PlayStation 5 of just some of the beautiful shots. There's this one enemy early in the game that's a chandelier, but it's also a spider. And so it's like hanging from the ceiling, and then it just crashes down, and then you're fighting in it, but it's like all the candles hanging off of it, and just in the beautiful, and he creates pixel art style. It's just a really wonderful aesthetic. And some of the bosses are cool as well. It's a little sterile though. It's nowhere near as good as like the Bloodstained 2D games and a lot of other stuff, but I'm glad to have played it. It's a little expensive too. I think it's $25, so I don't know if I would recommend it at that price, but that's the other game I'm playing, Grim Guardians Demon Purge. I think once I'm done with that, I'm going to move on to Wild Arms 2 and just begin to kind of get that comfort food out of the way, and then, roll in over the next few weeks to Resident Evil 4, because I'm not sure that anything else is even coming out that's of great interest to me before then. Maybe some odds and ends, but so that's where I stand with the games I'm playing right now. And that was a nice long meaty section of what we're playing. But there's some news to get through as well, my friends, and we should do that now. Begin with number 1. In a surprising move, Danish developer IO Interactive has revealed its upcoming all-new IP, likely spurred on by its desire to hire more for the project. Thank you. According to a post on its official website, the new game is described as Project Fantasy and is, quote, a bold new online fantasy RPG, end quote. This is, of course, far off the beaten path for a studio that has never made an RPG per se, though some of its games have certainly had various RPG influences. But IO's most notable series is no doubt the Hitman franchise, which began way back in 2000 and which last saw a primary release in 2021 when Hitman 3 came to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Since then, as we most recently reported and discussed, Hitman has moved on to an all-encompassing platform called World of Assassination. And with that solidified, and with its vaunted 007 project also still incubating, the team is ready to talk. Their fantasy-themed online RPG represents, quote, a world and a game built from the core to entertain players and expand for many years to come. It feels familiar, yet at the same time, IO is going on a journey unlike we have been on before, end quote. The team is actively hiring for the project, including soliciting meetings with developers during the upcoming GDC festivities in San Francisco, and continues to promote its 3 European locations for those interested in working closer to their respective homes. While the studio remains headquartered out of Copenhagen, it also has satellite locations in Sweden and Spain. IO Interactive, which was once owned by Square Enix, regained its independence in 2017 along with its Hitman IP. Other games the team is known for include both Kane and Lynch titles, which came to PS3 in 2007 and 2010, respectively, and the little-discussed but very charming Mini Ninjas, which came to PS3 in 2009. Their aforementioned pursuit of a 007 game remains their primary project, as they're creating an all-new James Bond to fit in the role, one approved by stakeholders including MGM. Okay, so this was probably the big news of the week in many corners. I'm curious, Chris, especially as a Hitman fan, what do you think about IO announcing their so-called Project Fantasy and hiring for this RPG that will apparently be online and exist for years?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think IO's really good at making a particular, like a very specific type of game, and they haven't really stretched their wings in this way really ever. before, as far as I've seen. You know, like they've really stuck with a specific formula, which is not, you know, necessarily the worst thing. I mean, Bungie has remained doing first person shooters since like the 90s. So like, I mean, you know, it's whatever works, and some of those can be great, if not all of them. But I mean, this is a pretty big foray away from what they're typically used to. I don't have a doubt that what they can make will be something fun, but I wonder if they can nail the multitude of design aspects that are required to make these kinds of things engaging. Simply because just the design of Hitman is so specific. I mean, it's not really, Hitman's not really an RPG at all. Like, there's like, I guess, some really light abstracted RPG elements in the sense that you unlock different what do you call, modifiers as you play, but it's not really RPG, and they don't really have a lot of experience online, at least as far as I'm aware. I think there was like that one Hitman Go. Am I crazy?
Yeah, but that was made by Square Enix. Montreal.
Right. Yeah. So this is new territory for them, and I think that's awesome. I always think it's really cool whenever a developer is willing to do that. I mean, it pays off sometimes. You have obviously Respawn diverging away from FPSs, and then they put together that Star Wars Souls-like that everybody fucking loves, and everybody's really excited about. And obviously Guerrilla is another example. I mean, maybe this will be cool. I don't know though, because this is very different. Like I'm the 007 thing I'm a lot more interested in, because it's a lot more in line with what I think fits in with what they can do. Or what they can do really, really well. But I mean, I don't know, man. An online RPG, that's a big jump, and it's also a big risk. You know, going online in general is risky, because there's a lot of people who already have their thing, especially in the advent of live service. I don't know. I hope it goes well, and I'm curious about it, but I'm gonna keep my eyes open for this. Because it'll be interesting if they could pull that off, because it would prove that they're yet another one of these secretly versatile studios that we had no idea existed.
Yeah,
a little bit like Tango, Guerrilla, and, you know, many others.
Yeah, they've gone off the beaten path a little bit with like Freedom. What was that? Freedom Fighters, and Freedom Wars? It was Freedom Fighters, right? The Freedom Fighters was Freedom Wars is the Vita game. Freedom Fighters is right. Is like that game where I think it's the Chinese or something take over, or maybe it's the Russians.
Yeah, you're right.
And that was on PS2 and GameCube, and then they did Kane and Lynch, 2 of those. But the thing about those games is that they're all third-person shooters, along with Hitman, and like you said, presumably 007. The only truly different game that they ever did was a game that I really love, and I mentioned was Mini Ninjas. I think that game's awesome, and
Mini Ninjas is cool.
Yeah, it's a really really neat game.
But that was also a while ago.
Yeah, it was. And it was a one-off, and I'm sure they made it for nothing, and I don't think anyone cared about it. I really liked it, though. I thought it was really cute. But if you go on IO's website and then go to the Project Fantasy part, people can read and watch all they want. There's a ton of videos with like interviews with people. I'm not sitting through all that to find information, but I'm not that interested in this game right now. But we'll see what happens with them. I mean, they're certainly coming into their own, and it's funny. They were independent. They were bought by Eidos back in the early 2000s. Then Eidos was bought by Square Enix. And then Square Enix let them go. Then Square Enix let the Hitman IP go. And so they've kind of found their footing again. It's a rare but not unfounded example of a studio surviving both within and outside of a first party. And so we'll wish them the very best. And I would imagine this game is a long ways off. I would say 2027, maybe something like that.
I like the art that they have for it. Also, shout out to their website's really good. Yeah,
it is. It's very really clean. I spent some time on it for sure. Dustin, what do you think about Project Fantasy?
I honestly think that Hitman is one of the most I don't know if underrated, but I feel like it is underappreciated, particularly 100%. Hitman 3 and the way they put things together, and just how they were able to take something that you would expect to be kind of defined, like what a Hitman level is or what a Hitman game is, and completely rework it in a way that totally makes sense and is super not only surprising, but awesome, like totally awesome. And IO, man, they're one of the teams. I feel like I might have to ask our shirt guy, Colin, because I want an IO shirt because
Yeah,
I
get a
think
shirt.
this team is so cool. And I love the fact that right now it seems that they're working on a James Bond game where they can kind of take what they already established with Hitman and take it to a totally new direction. Hopefully a direction that's really silly, like even sillier and more fun to me. Like I want a part in this James Bond game where you're like hanging from a helicopter shooting guys, like more old school James Bond, right? I think that that's going to, even though they're working within an IP, I think that it's going to open them up creatively to do things with that format. But like I said, this is a team that is clearly very competent and is able to think outside the box. And so while they haven't made an RPG before, and that's of course always a risk to do something different, I think they can pull it off. I really hope they do, because Chris and I mention this level every time that we talk about Hitman, but
the manor.
Level 2 of Hitman 3, the manor, amazing. One of the greatest of all time when it comes to level design. And so I will be watching with great interest for whatever they do.
We'll be following your career with great interest.
Great interest. Right.
All right. Shout out to IO Interactive. Yeah, they have that cool logo, IOI, that would make for a good shirt, I think.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Number 2. We don't know anything about it, but we do know it's coming. Elden Ring is getting a DLC expansion called Shadows of the Erd Tree. Literally, that's all we know. According to a brief posting on publisher Bandai Namco's website, a news item reads in part, quote, "Rise, tarnished, and let us walk a new path together." An upcoming expansion for Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, is currently in development. We hope you look forward to the new adventures in the lands between, unquote. Elden Ring, launched just over a year ago to near universal critical acclaim and immense commercial success, comes by way of renowned Japanese studio From Software. And depending on how you count it, Elden Ring marks the studio's 7th so-called Souls game, which began with 2009's PlayStation 3 exclusive Demon's Souls. That game was followed by a trilogy of Dark Souls games published by Bandai Namco on PS3 and PS4 between 2011 and 2016, and an Activision-published project from 2019 called Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. From Software is also renowned for its prelude to the Demon's Souls franchise, the long-running Kingsfield series that began as a PS1 launch title in Japan in 1994, as well as Armored Core, the mech series started on PS1 in 1997, and which is set to receive its 6th core entry, Fires of Rubicon, later this year on both PS4 and PS5. Likewise, From has a long history of DLC support for its Souls games, going all the way back to the Artorias of the Abyss, an expansion that came to the original Dark Souls a year after its release in 2012. At more than 20 million copies sold, Elden Ring is From's most popular game of all time, and it was one of 2022's best-selling games, winning numerous prestigious Game of the Year awards along the way. Greg Hanley wrote into us on Patreon and said, "Greetings, Sacred Men. I hope you guys enjoyed the live show and returned home safely. This one is mainly for Tarnished Dustin and Iron Fist Chris. I can't begin to explain my excitement when I saw that there is an Elden Ring DLC in development. I simply can't get enough of From Software. My question is, what are you both looking to see in the next adventure in the lands between? Also, what do you maybe hope to see less of based on previous Elden Ring experience? A massive thank you to all of your consistent content. I'm sorry, best podcast out there, no doubt. Thank you, Greg, for writing in. Dustin, you're our Elden Ring boy. And of course, Chris loves it as well, so we'll hear extensively from both of you. What do you think? Shadow of the Erd Tree. I mean, this seems to be imperative, in my opinion, considering the sales numbers. If you can even convert 10% of people to buy it, that's much more money for you as you inevitably get Elden Ring 2 off the ground behind the scenes.
Yeah, this is very exciting. It's not surprising, but that doesn't make it any less exciting. And you don't have to take my word for it as the Souls fanboy on the show. You can just look online that From Software is best in class when it comes to DLC. The Bloodborne DLC, both Dark Souls 3 DLC. Some people say the Dark Souls 2 DLC is better than the main game. Really, really well done stuff. And what I love about it in particular is that they really go all the way with these DLCs, and they're not afraid to put their toughest challenges in the DLC. Particularly Dark Souls 3. Some of those fights are really, really tough, but it almost feels it's great for people that have already played the main game.
Yeah, you graduate to it.
Yeah, you graduate to the DLC. This announcement is pretty cool. I saw the image. I saw people saying that it was already had tons of lore implications just in that one image alone. As far as what I want from it is, I don't know, it's easy to just say you want more Elden Ring, but there is something to be said about these types of games is that your first experience is always going to be your best because there's that sense of wonder and discovery that you're not going to have the second time. It's the gameplay's still going to hold up, and exploring, building your character, that's also going to be there, but you're never going to expand that map for the first time ever again. So that's the thing for me is that I want this DLC to take place on an entirely different continent. It's okay if it's smaller, but I don't want to know where I am at all, and I don't know what the land holds for me. As far as things I want to see less, I think it would be okay if they don't feel the need for, I guess, filler content, right? Like a million smaller dungeons that have kind of copy and paste bosses. That's something that I think it's good that it's there for the main experience. I think that adds a lot of value to people, and I don't necessarily see it as a negative, but I think for this DLC that you don't necessarily need to keep us around as long. Make it all killer with amazing locations, amazing bosses, some new characters, new weapons. We don't need to see 10 very similar copy and paste type dungeons. Just give us only the best, even if it's a little shorter. We're okay with that. But Chris, I'm curious what you think, if this is something you would dive into, since I don't think you fully finished, but that doesn't mean you can't check out DLC.
Yeah, no, I got about 100 hours in. I don't remember what level I tapped out at. I feel like it was like in the 70s. I'm not, or maybe 80s. I'm not super sure. I got to go back and check. But I got to I got to this part in there was like a blizzard, and like there was like a snow dragon in a blizzard, and I was getting my ass handed to me. And then I think at that point I was like, I put 100 hours into this game. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I have it in me to keep going. But I love Elden Ring. I think it's fantastic. I think I'm any excuse that I have to go back into it and experience something new, preferably from a DLC perspective, which I don't have a ton of experience with From Software DLC, but I assume is like not necessarily a fresh perspective, but in some way that feels like I'm starting something new again. That's kind of what I hope. Because the biggest wall for me getting back into Elden Ring is knowing that my skills have atrophied for sure, because I haven't played it in a long time. I'm going to have to jump back into it. And when I jump back into it, I'm going to be at a part that the game assumes I've played for like 90 hours straight, 100 hours straight to get to. It's going to assume very highly of my skills, and I'm going to be kind of soft locked. So it would be great to, have a new area to explore, like you said, new enemies to fight, but also kind of, I don't know, just something that doesn't feel like I'm jumping into the middle of something, because that's ultimately my main problem with going back to it. I can't fight this dragon. I could have probably if I kept going when I was playing, but there was just too much else to play, and I think I'm probably done with the main part of it now, even if I didn't finish it. I think 100 hours is enough time to put into something.
Definitely.
But I'm super into it. I hope it's a new location, because the most special thing about Elden Ring to me was like the combat was great. I loved finding like, different pieces of gear to like customize my guy. Like I loved that aspect, but watching that map expand and like watching the density of the environment get deeper and deeper, and realize like, what, there's an underside, what, there's like a floating fucking like where is all the, it felt like almost like it felt like a single player MMO that had been running for 9 years and you just jumped into it, where it's like, what is all this content? Like, how is there this much in anything? It's crazy. It's overwhelming, and it's amazing. And so hopefully they can deliver something like a bit more of a bite-sized version of that, and recapture some of that magic of expanding that map and discovering, because that really is the special part of it, I think. Like the combat's great, but like that is the sauce that really got me, I think. And it would be nice to have that again.
Yeah, I remain relatively anti-DLC, regardless of the game and regardless of the financial imperative. I just feel like just use that energy on the next one. I know you want to. I don't even think it's so much about making money on the DLC, although obviously it is. It's about getting people to revisit the game, buy it, for the first time, get the Game of the Year edition, the special edition. You have to like give people, they can't sell it again until they put DLC into it. I know I'm a little bit sensitive to that, but it's true.
I kind of agree. I agree in some way, but I also feel like DLC, I feel like a lot of that is in how you phrase it or how you market it. Like, because I feel like Spider-Man Miles Morales is DLC. You know what I mean? Like, I think they just sort of like fleshed it out and made it into a full thing, but it's clearly like it's a lot shorter than the main story. There's not a lot of filler, which is good. Like, I love that. But it's not like Spider-Man Miles Morales. It doesn't feel like a Spider-Man 2, you know what I mean? And quite frankly, that Spider-Man PS4 DLC felt like nothing.
I didn't even play it.
It was really phenomenally underwhelming. Like, I love Insomniac, and I love that main game is amazing. It justifies itself as it is. But that DLC didn't really feel like DLC at all. And I feel like if they just marketed DLC as its own standalone thing, I feel like people would be a lot more into it. And I feel like it would have less of that kind of tacked on feeling. I feel like that's a lot of what, because wasn't there an Infamous DLC that did something similar? Or
First Light was like a standalone expansion for the third Infamous game.
That's better to me than, that is way cooler and way better than here's Infamous Second Son DLC. You know?
Yeah,
standalone
I get that.
Is always way cooler.
I loved that. I loved that expansion for Infamous because it was like a lot of it was arena combat, which I thought Infamous just made for that kind of thing, like horde mode almost.
Yeah,
it's absolutely like perfect for that. And I thought I'm softening on Infamous 3 a little. You know, Second Son over time. I always loved the powers, like the neon power. I thought was just so cool. There's just like such a neat idea, but. We'll never see more Infamous again, unfortunately, I don't think. But you're right that was a nice sweet spot. And I was thinking in my mind, actually, when you were talking about this, because I've mentioned that when Death Stranding 2 comes out, whenever that happens, I'd probably play Death Stranding again leading into that. And for some reason, I never considered the fact that I would probably or probably should play Spider-Man again right before Spider-Man 2 comes out, especially because I never played the PS5 version and I never played the DLC. And they're all together on the PS5 version. So perhaps I can do that leading up to the release of Spider-Man 2 inevitably later this year, and we'll see that, I think, right before E3. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's enough Elden Ring. I can't take it anymore. Let's move on. Number 3. In unsurprising but perhaps sobering news, publisher Square Enix has announced that it's officially shuttering its fully owned Japanese studio Luminous Productions, merging its staff with Square Enix's more fluid internal development resources as of May 1st. Word comes by way of 2 announcements, one made on its official website and another via social media. In the more carefully worded press release, the following is written in part, quote, "The merger is part of the company's efforts to further bolster the competitive prowess of the group's development studios, a goal set forth under its current medium-term business strategy. Square Enix has developed numerous AAA HD games and possesses a wealth of intellectual property and content. Luminous is meanwhile equipped with not only AAA title development capabilities, but also technical expertise in areas such as game engine development. Combining the 2 entities will further enhance the group's ability to develop HD games," end quote. Meanwhile, over on social media, the following was written in part, noting that until May 1st, Luminous, quote, "remains entirely focused on Forspoken. We are currently working on the previously announced patch to address overall game performance, and the DLC, In Tanto We Trust, is on track for release this summer, ellipsis. When we established Luminous Productions in 2018, our vision was to make AAA games that fuse technology and artistry to deliver completely new play experiences. Having the chance to do just that has been a dream come true. We appreciate you taking this journey with us and look forward to continuing to create new entertainment and experiences as part of the Square Enix family," end quote. The last part is especially peculiar since Luminous Productions has always been an explicit member of the Square Enix family. Also, while Luminous was technically created in 2018, it far predates that, having once been known as Business Division 2. It was under this moniker that the team created Final Fantasy XV, which launched on PlayStation 4 to a mixed critical response and a much more successful commercial response in 2016. When Square Enix reorganized its internal teams following Final Fantasy XV, Business Unit 2 became Luminous Productions, while Creative Business Unit 2 was spawned to specifically watch over Dragon Quest, so they aren't to be confused. Creative Business 3 is currently Square Enix's most notable team, as they are behind Final Fantasy XVI, coming to PlayStation 5 later this year. As for Luminous's second and final game, Forspoken, it launched earlier this year on PS5 to a mixed critical and relatively poor commercial response. Dustin, I got to get your take on this. The shuttering of Luminous Productions, Square Enix pretending that they didn't own them and found them to begin with. I thought this was very strange. Nothing really changed. This reminds me a little bit of Japan Studio. Basically just being renamed into something else and kind of some of its parts being split apart to to the wind. I think they're very smart to break up Luminous. There's obviously no magic with that team, and this is kind of more what I'm talking about with being able to move on. And certainly there's much talent there, so they're keeping it. They're not laying anyone off. So what do you think about this?
It feels like a lot of Luminous is rooted in the engine, the Luminous engine itself. And it comes from an era where it almost felt like a lot of teams were striving to create their own engines. Think of EA with, it's not Snowdrop, is it? I'm trying to remember.
Frostbite.
Anyway, Frostbite, that's it. Snowdrop is a
Snowdrop
different
is Ubisoft.
engine. Is Ubisoft. Yeah,
Ubisoft,
so we have a lot
Snowdrop, the division is built on Snowdrop.
Right. And you have like CD Projekt Red with their engine as well. And what's interesting is that a lot of these teams went and made their own engines and then have a lot of issues with them. Particularly, it seems like Luminous, with most recently with Forspoken, it's just the game is not really up to snuff for current hardware. I think Final Fantasy 15 was fine in what it did from a technical perspective, but that game was also delayed a million times. Probably some of it partially them, some of it also was just mismanagement of that project. But it's funny now because we see a lot of these teams that made these engines either going away, like in this case, and now a lot of them just surrendering to Unreal Engine. We saw CD Projekt do that as well with their next game, saying that they're kind of abandoning what they're doing with the Red Engine. So it's not surprising, especially given the outcome of Forspoken, but I kind of wonder if this was kind of the writing on the wall either way, just in that I think a lot of companies have realized that even if they can make their own engine and save the money by not having to license one, is it really worth it when you consider how much money you have to put in, how difficult it is to change and add new features, and you don't have someone to call or experts that know it in and out because that's supposed to be you. You built it. So I kind of feel like this was maybe going to happen either way, but clearly, like we said, the response to Forspoken and most likely the sales too probably kind of just cemented that. That was like, yeah, let's just move on from this initiative to make our own engine and have this team. And it's good to hear though that they're not like being laid off at all, that they're kind of just being absorbed. Clearly there's a lot of talent there. Making your own engine is, I imagine, probably one of the toughest things in game development. So the fact that they will just move on and work on other Square Enix projects is a silver lining, I would say.
Yeah, I have no love for Final Fantasy 15. I just never have hit that. And Forspoken was clearly troubled. And this is an example of people focusing more on fidelity than on the actual quality of the games themselves, which is why, yeah, as far as we can tell, no layoffs. I don't know. There might not even be legally allowed to do that in Japan, considering these specific positions. I just think it's funny how they're trying to. Square Enix is really steadily shedding weight. Like I think they kind of see the writing on the wall and the forest for the trees. They work with a lot of smaller Japanese studios, get a lot of ghost work done too on their games. And I think they're just happier to deal with a smaller, more talented first party and then a bunch of their usual partners to make games like Valkyria, Elysium, and whatever, ActRaiser or whatever games they want to make that they're not really working with internally because people are so desperate to work with Square Enix. So I think that they can use that and leverage that. And I agree with you. An interesting way that publishers are inoculating themselves from the cost of licensing engines is to simply buy parts of the engine companies, which is what Sony has specifically done with Epic. By owning a few percent of Epic, you're basically offsetting any costs, assuming you don't get special deals because you're PlayStation, assuming you don't get special deals because now you own a piece of the company, you're kind of offsetting the cost by just getting some of the profit back from that operation. So I think it's better to do that. I think you're going to see more companies doing that, and you are seeing more companies do that. The reliance on Unreal Engine is becoming substantial at this point, very reminiscent of the Unreal 3 era. And that was the era when everyone started to split up. That's when you started getting CryEngine and all these different things starting to do their own thing. But it just doesn't work. It's hard. And of course, Sony doing their own stuff constantly with the initiative for the Common Engine, or ICE. Chris, you have anything you want to add about Luminous Productions shuttering?
No, I mean, I think... I'm just happy that it's not one of these stories where, it's a studio being completely shuttered and people are scattered to the wind, and it's fortunately a more of an absorption kind of situation, which is a lot better. But I mean, it's not super surprising. I mean, Forspoken is just not it's just not it. And like you said, there's no magic in the team. It seems like there's talent, but that doesn't necessarily always lead to something that's special. You kind of have to have, you have to have talent, you have to have magic, and you have to have that bit of luck also. And I just don't think they had it. So I think, it makes perfect sense. I'm just glad that nobody lost their job,
Yeah, not yet. All right. Let's move on. Number 4. According to reporting for website Kotaku, one of the publisher Ubisoft's key internal teams, the France-based studio Ubisoft Montpelier, is currently in meltdown mode. Founded nearly 3 decades ago and responsible for a handful of Ubisoft's key games over the years, Montpelier hasn't only lost its managing director, but many other leads and other employees as well, as their key project, the forever in development and obviously tortured Beyond Good and Evil 2, remains in development hell. For starters, its aforementioned managing director, Guillaume Carmona, is out. This is following his extended absence spanning all the way back into the beginning of the year, with Ubisoft declining to comment to Kotaku on why he was gone. However, Kotaku reports in part, quote, his departure comes after a year which saw dozens of developers in Montpelier going out on extended leave for stress or sickness, including many leads, ellipsis. Some came back while others eventually left the studio altogether, eventually sparking a visit from the French Labor Inspection Office last December. Kotaku understands that the third-party entity has now been tasked with interviewing employees at Montpelier and providing a full report on the health and well-being of the teams, end quote. Other heads have been moved around as well. Jean-Marc Geffroy and Benjamin Dumas are out as creative director and game director, respectively, replaced by Emile Morel and Charles Gaudron. Geffroy was a longtime designer at Ubisoft, working on series like Watch Dogs, while Dumas was likewise a designer who worked on series like Assassin's Creed and games like Zombie U. Replacements Morel and Gaudron have plenty of design and production experience of their own, including in Ubisoft franchises like Tom Clancy and Rayman. As for Beyond Good and Evil 2, it's unclear whether anyone will actually ever see it or anyone will care when they do. Officially revealed in 2016, the game was indeed in various forms of pre-production and production spanning all the way back to the early PlayStation 3 era. It's a follow-up to Ubisoft Montpelier's most famous game outside of the Rayman franchise, 2003's Beyond Good and Evil, which itself was a modest critical and commercial hit that in no way, shape, or form demanded a protracted development cycle like this. In fact, I got that game when it came out in 2003, and I liked it a lot, but I remember people talking about a sequel then, and I went and looked it up to make sure I wasn't wrong. Ubisoft said around the same time, like, this game didn't even sell. This is the deep mystery about Beyond Good and Evil. Who played it? And why are we getting a sequel to it? It didn't sell well enough to get a sequel in the sequelized era, where they would have fucking turned Beyond Good and Evil literally 90 degrees in the engine and then released it again and called it Beyond Good and Evil 2 if they could have gotten away with it. So that this game has been so long tortured, I think they got to just cancel this shit. It's over.
Yeah.
It's over. Chris, what do you think?
I think it's insane that this is still happening. Like, 2016 is a while ago. It doesn't seem like that long ago because it seems technically it's like modern, but that's a fucking hot minute ago. And to know that it's been kind of in some way, shape, or form in this weird tortured cycle since like PS3 time,
2008.
Like, you gotta kill this, man. Like, I feel so many different ways about this because I do think there was a period of time where I think specifically in 2016, where if they had come out with Beyond Good and Evil 2, if they had like 2016, here's a trailer, and then the next year it showed up, I feel like people would be super stoked about it. It's like, oh, interesting. Like, it's like a sequel to this really kind of cult classic, small, weird, just like weird oddball game that was pretty damn good, but nobody really liked, or nobody really bought, I should say. Like, that's interesting. That's cool. I remember seeing the trailer and thinking it was really cool looking too. But I mean, ship has sailed, man. This is confusing. And there's no weird deal with the Singaporean government that like makes it make sense as to why it's been going on for so long. It's just this just seems like a bad decision to keep this going.
Yeah, I'm confused why you wouldn't just eat the cost of this now and just be done. Just be done with it. It's incredibly confounding. Dustin, do you have anything you want to add?
I think it's funny because I remember when Duke Nukem Forever came out and they're like, this is the longest game that was ever in development hell, right? And I remember thinking at the time, like, man, this game was announced and started development. I looked it up, or 1996, 14 years in development. I was like, that's way before my time. In 1996, I was 3 years old. And now it's funny. It's like a gauge of how, as you get older, how you experience time changes, because Beyond Good and Evil 2 is now the record holder for the longest game development in 15 years. And I remember in 2008 when it was announced, or it was teased at that E3, right?
Yeah.
And then I also remember the E3 in 2017. That was the first E3. It's either I think the first E3 I went to, whatever one where they brought out, didn't they bring out Joseph Gordon-Levitt because his company was involved
that was right.
with the creation of it?
That was,
who knows what happened with that too. So it's weird. This game has basically been around the entire time that I've been interested in the industry. And it's just, I don't know. It's weird. Clearly, I don't know. Ubisoft, you got a lot of problems right now. And it's like becoming increasingly obvious that this is a company that when you really take a look at what's going on, it seems like they're in free fall in a lot of ways. They've got they've got Skull and Bones, they've got the multitude of personnel issues. It's just, I don't know. This was once such a dominant publisher in the space, and now it seems like absolute chaos.
Yeah. And it's true. I like Ubisoft, and we talk about that from time to time. I like some of their games. I like Far Cry. I love Far Cry. I like The Division and some of the other stuff. But yeah, they need to be, there's way too many people working there at almost 20,000 heads. That's going to change. And there's just way too many games coming out that are often competing with one another. And it's a bad idea, but it's just so strange. Beyond Good and Evil was just not relevant. You know, Michel Ancel has not been at Ubisoft for years. His other, in an active capacity, his other game, remember, Michel Ancel promised a PS4 exclusive game called Wild, if anyone remembers that, which also never came to fruition, was eventually canceled. So it's just, you have people wrapped up in this thing that are unreliable for a game that's not really worth it. I actually did play Beyond Good and Evil. I'm one of the people that did play it.
I played it.
You know, I remember they re-released it on PS3, I want to say, in 360
HD or something.
Yeah.
Just that in that era, the HD.
I had it on Xbox actually, because that was like where it ran the best, and that's where I ended up getting it. But it's not that good. I mean, not even remotely to require a sequel. Nonetheless, this protracted advance towards it, I don't know. It's very strange. Ubisoft's got to clean it up. They're going to clean it up, or they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I think they know that. And I think they already are in a lot of trouble. All right. Number 5. In sad news for those eager for the hopefully triumphant return of Telltale Games, the Reform Studios' upcoming game, The Wolf Among Us 2, has been delayed. Originally slated to launch sometime this year on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, the team has come out to delay the game out of 2023 entirely. It will now launch sometime in 2024. Now, this Telltale isn't the same Telltale we once knew. The original Telltale, founded in 2004 and shuttered in 2018 under significant financial duress, was reestablished later that same year with much of the original IP and games. But since then, everything has kind of been in a holding pattern. Telltale would primarily develop its own games internally back in the day, including hits like 2010's Sam & Max The Devil's Playground, 2010's through 2011's Back to the Future, and its Walking Dead games as well, which began in 2012, all on PS3. The original Wolf Among Us, spawned from a graphic novel, was also published in this time frame, coming out episodically on PS3, PS4, and Vita beginning in 2013. However, following some up and down performances with IP like Minecraft, Guardians of the Galaxy, Batman, and Game of Thrones, Telltale went belly up during the development of the 4th and final season of The Walking Dead, which was saved by external publisher Skybound Games. However, another season of Game of Thrones, a Stranger Things series, and more were canceled at this point, and that brings us to now, where Telltale has 2 announced series, The Wolf Among Us 2, developed externally at a team called Ad Hoc, and a game based on Amazon's Expanse series, slated to launch later this year via developer Deck 9, which some of you would know from a smattering of Life is Strange games, beginning with 2017's Before the Storm. What do you think about this, Dustin? I was curious to get your take on this. Telltale kind of taking it easy. I think this is very smart because this name comes loaded with a lot of poor expectations, and they gotta shake that by putting out the best possible products.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't know if I've ever talked about Telltale on the show before, but I have never really been a fan of any of these games. I've tried many of them, but despite that, despite their cool stories, and I know people like the interactivity, I don't know. I never could get into them. I tried playing Walking Dead, tried playing Game of Thrones, I tried playing Wolf Among Us, and I all found them to be pretty boring to me. And that's and the thing too is that even if they were exciting, they ran like shit. These games ran horribly for no apparent reason. It's not like they were graphical showpieces or anything like that. I remember once I thought, I'm going to try Walking Dead again. And I had a flight or a trip or something. And I thought, I'll try Walking Dead on Vita because I have it there. I don't remember why. I don't know if it was the PS Plus game or something like that. That game runs so bad on Vita. It is embarrassing how bad
they didn't even bother bringing any of the other ones over because of that.
Yeah. So I think it's cool for the fans, particularly for Wolf Among Us, because I know a lot of people really like that. I think it's cool it's coming back. I have a lot of hope for the fact this is a resurrected Telltale, that they can pull this off, preferably with some level of technical expertise, but it's not really doing much for me. But you're right, Colin. I think the most important thing is that they got to come out strong. You resurrected this brand that has all this baggage. You got to come out the gate really strong, or else people will be like, cool, they're just the way they were before. I'll forget anything they do at this point.
Yeah, it's just different now. Like, they're acting more as publisher. Now, they were both at a time when there wasn't a lot of both going on, I'm just writing all over my sweatshirt, unless you're one of the bigger guys. And the problem with their whole situation, and we'll throw it over to you, Chris, is they were obsessed with their own technology. Now, I understand this because you avoid licensing and you have control, but it was an unholy marriage because they were doing fast released episodic content across many platforms on a single engine, and it was bad news, and everyone knows that. In fact, I explicitly remember the funniest one was Game of Thrones, where I think if you downloaded, some people experienced things where like it would just delete your saves. If you started playing like episode 3, episode 4, it would just like delete everything you had, and like just weird things like that. I remember them releasing Tales from the Borderlands on PlayStation with Xbox button prompts on it. And like, so things like that were
I remember that.
Things like that were just happening. I don't even know how that got through. I mean, that seems like something that shouldn't even have gotten through. That shows you that they had like a special pipeline and a bit of trust built up with Sony that they let that get through. But the good news now, Chris, is that they're working with external teams, not internal teams anymore. So they're acting more as a publisher specifically. And Unreal Engine is where these games will run, which is good. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are here on the delay of the Wolf Among Us 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's smart for all the reasons that you said. I think changing the engine is sorely necessary because that Telltale engine is just not whatever the hell they were using. Whatever the fuck it was. I feel like it was just.
It was called Telltale Tool, I think. It was the.
I feel like those games ran on thoughts and prayers. Like, actually. Like, it's amazing how poorly, considering how little they were doing. You know, it's not like they were like simulating intense physics. It's not like they were like rendering these like massive worlds. It's crazy, the chugging that those games would go through. So I think it's smart. Everything that they're doing is smart. I think delaying to make sure that your return is polished is smart. I think switching the engine to something that's a little bit more reliable is smart, even if you have to pay some licensing costs. But I am also kind of with Dustin in the sense that, like, you know, I liked The Walking Dead. I played through that first season and thought, like, yeah, that was neat. Especially around the time, 2012. It was like a very interesting experimental kind of time. Or like the end of a very interesting kind of XBLA kind of laden environment. So it was like, it was interesting. It was cool. It was new. And then I finished the first season of The Walking Dead and I thought, like, wow, that was really cool. I don't think I need this ever again, though. And then they made, you know, Batman and Wolf Among Us. And I gave those a proper college try, but I never, I don't know. I was kind of over it. Like, it was like an interesting one-time little experience. And I don't know. I wonder how those games, or specifically that style of game, how it would be received by a modern audience. Or how a game like that would perform, because it's not like Detroit, which is, you know, it's got like high production value. It's not quite like even something like Life is Strange, which I would argue is still way more of a game in the traditional sense. I don't know. There's just something about it that I'm not super convinced that Telltale was necessarily the studio of all the studios that have been shuttered that should have been revived in this way. Because I'm not really sure what their place is. I don't know. I can think of like so many other, like I think immediately Pandemic. I'm like, oh man, I wish we had Pandemic back. But instead we get Telltale back, and it's just like, god damn. Like I don't know. I don't know what we like. Wolf Among Us, I heard is really good. So maybe this next one's gonna be great. I know the style of it looks cool. Like the trailer that they showed looked a lot better. But I don't know.
Well, they have to just embrace the
personally invested.
They have to embrace the Netflix style of just releasing it all at once and see what happens. And that's what broke me from ever wanting to play Telltale games. So it would always be like, oh, I'll get to it. Like we've said in the past, it's like, oh, I would have got. So I just never got to it. The two games I got to were season 1 of The Walking Dead and Batman season 1, which I thought were both good. But I remember Batman being botched and fucked up too on PS4. It just was comical how bad it was, like how bad the technology was, how bad the engine was. And I'm positive you can go back and listen to me on Podcasts Beyond and old shows where I'm like, they got to shut this thing down for like a year and just fix this technology right now because they were just putting shit on top of it, on top of it, on top of it, on top of it. It reminded me a great deal of IGN's old backend, which was this proprietary thing that was just a motherfucking disaster by the end. And it took them years to unravel it and figure out like how to even fix it. And they were between a rock and a hard place, and they're lucky Skybound came in and cared about The Walking Dead to finish it, or they would have had nothing to finish. And obviously, I don't know who the particular people are, but props to the people that bought Telltale and all the IP, because that was very smart. If you had money to throw around at that time, I'm sure people were all over that. In fact, I went and looked at the press release, and the press release was in between Christmas and New Year's that year. So it happened like just out of nowhere like that. They got their hands on it. Very, very smart, because I think they can make a lot of money if they just figure out how to do it properly. All right, finally, number 6. New monthly offerings for PlayStation Plus were quietly revealed over the last week. For those paying attention, these games are free to download for anyone with an active PlayStation Plus account, regardless of which tier you're subscribed to, and the games in question will be available to add to your download list beginning March 7th. And remember, take the time to add these games to your download list, even if you don't intend on playing them now, as they will be available to you later, so long as your PS Plus account is active. The biggest game of the bunch is no doubt Battlefield 2042, launched in 2021 on PS4 and PS5 by way of Electronic Arts' own developer DICE. Poorly received and supported, it's unclear if EA and DICE have any hope of reviving this game with this move. And remember, there is no single-player functionality within. The other 2 games are for PlayStation 4 only. First up in this regard is Minecraft Dungeons, which came via Mojang to PlayStation 4 in 2020. While it has a current-gen release on Xbox Series X and S, it hasn't been updated for PS5, likely because this is a Microsoft-owned franchise. And offered to PS Plus subscribers this month is the 2019 action RPG Code Vein, developed internally at Bandai Namco and released to middling reviews. This makes March 2023 one of the weaker PS Plus months in recent memory. No doubt about it. Chris, let's hear your thoughts. How are you feeling? Anything speak to you here? You're gonna spend 100 hours with Battlefield 2042 now?
No. I might try it out. Like, because I mean, I've heard that they've improved it somewhat. Like, I know some people who like say it's better than it was. I don't know, man. I feel like Battlefield 1 was the last time I was really into it. Like it was the last time I felt like they really nailed that mix of arcade and simulated real world kind of like warfare, like on a large scale. And Battlefield 5 was just a little fucky. It wasn't even particularly that bad. It was just kind of like off, but off in such a way that it completely turned me off. And this game was just a botched I love that this game shipped without a scoreboard. It's
amazing.
That will never not be hysterical to me. Especially because it didn't even have a single player. There's no single player functionality, like you mentioned. It is a purely multiplayer focused Battlefield, no scoreboard to be seen. I think they patched it in or something.
Yeah, they did. And why wasn't that just a trivial thing? That's the strangest part.
Well, that's like, I don't know, man. That's like forgetting to put a pause button. Like it's just like one of the most basic implementations of a game like this. It's like, if you're playing a multiplayer game, you want to know how well you're doing. Like that's just, these games are all stat driven. Even if it's not necessarily like an RPG where it's like, oh, the stats on my guns, you still at least want to know in some way how you performed, even if you suck, because it's hilarious. Oh, I got killed like 29,000 times and I only killed 2 people. Dope. I'm going to go ahead and cry now. But I don't know, man. It's just, I might give it a shot if it's free. Because I played the alpha of it, I think. Like they had a closed alpha that I was for some reason invited to. I think somebody got the wrong email. And I got into it and I was like, this is this is an alpha, or not an alpha, maybe a beta. I can't remember which one. But it was like, this is really not ideal here. Like, it feels really wrong. But everything else, I'm not really that interested in Code Vein or Minecraft Dungeons, certainly. So this is definitely a pretty weak month.
Yeah, agreed. Dustin, any thoughts?
Yeah, interesting that Minecraft Dungeons is the game of choice since that's a Microsoft-owned game. But yeah, Battlefield, I've heard with Chris that it is much better now. So if you were interested in it at launch but held off because you heard it was bad, this is the ultimate reason to check it out. If you've got PS Plus, it is free with your subscription. So now's the time to do it. Code Vein, I don't know. I've heard a lot of mixed things. Some people think this game is trash. Other people told me that it's good. But I'm not interested at this point. But definitely a weaker month overall. But that's okay. I'm not the type of person that's like super mad or feels like every month needs to be insanely good. Because to somebody, these choices are great. But
and we also did just have a pretty good one, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Like this last month was not too bad at all. So yeah.
I'm also just not really needing free games. I mean, I'm just telling you. Like I wouldn't have PS Plus at all if not for this cloud saving. I don't care. So for me, it's free games. That's cool. Free in quotes, obviously, but nothing I want to play. I don't even remember the last thing I played from PS Plus. All right. Might have been like Maneater and that Octodad game.
Well, that's a while ago.
What was that one? Not Octodad.
Deadliest Catch?
No. The guys that did Octodad, about the island, Bug Snacks.
Oh, Bug Snacks.
Those were probably the last two. And I think that was in 2020 for both of them.
Here's something worth pointing out. PSVR is out. Why don't we start getting a VR title in here?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Get rid of one PS4 title, throw in a PSVR title or something like that. That would be...
Or God forbid, a fourth game. You don't want to do that.
Ooh.
No. Okay. That's it for the news. Let's get into the listener inquiries as we end each episode of Sacred Symbols. 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience. I just choose randomly things I think will be interesting to talk about. We talk about them here, and we'll start with Justin Schwab, who says, "Hey, CDC, quick PSA. I have been seeing a lot of people write about how gaming just isn't as fun anymore with the marketing and negativity online. To all my gaming brethren out there, play what you want to play. Reviewers and other people's opinions can help, but it's not the end all be all. Over this past year, I have stopped looking at reviews and I put my money where my mouth is. Because of this, I have thoroughly enjoyed games such as Sonic Frontiers, Valkyrie Elysium, and even Forspoken, despite their flaws." Justin, I'm glad you wrote in. Thank you for doing so. I wanted to write in specifically I wanted to talk about this specifically to say this. Everyone talks about the negativity in the games industry or negativity in things, which is true. And it's interesting to discuss every once in a while. But has anyone ever stopped and considered their own response to things and how they are, in fact, maybe adding to the negativity? And I'm not saying you're doing this, Justin. I'm saying I hope that there are people self-aware enough in this audience to know that you are, in fact, the source of some of this negativity, just like I am sometimes the source of the negativity. And we all need to do better to navigate that, to not withdraw it, to not be more positive than negative or anything like that, but to simply navigate around it better. People take things way too seriously. People get bent out of shape over nothing. I have never given a fuck about someone's video game opinion about in any way, shape, or form to be upset about it. I don't know that that's ever been any different. Someone can say whatever they want about anything. I don't care enough to like get that bent out of shape about it. You're listening because you're interested. You're listening because you like video games and you want maybe some different opinions and to calculate the way you should feel about things and take the temperature. But it's a lot of people out there being their own worst enemy. And that's what I've been noticing the most, not in our community per se, although there are elements of that here, but just widely. I don't know if Dustin, if that resonates with you, but people just need to like take it down a notch. I've often made fun of the listeners who say like on Colin's recent rant, or Colin went on a diatribe, or kind of like, you need to learn how to use words. Like the vocabulary, the English vocabulary is deeper and more effectual than this. To call like Sacred Symbols ranty, I really think that says a lot about you, And so I just feel like play what you want to play and listen to what you want to listen to, but don't also internalize everything like it matters. That's a really important component of it. That I think will make people much more at peace with not only the hobby, but with each other. Just take things as they come. Don't take it so personally. Someone disagrees with you or doesn't see eye to eye with you on something. Who cares? That's the texture of humanity. That's what makes us all different. And so I don't think it's any more necessarily negative or markety right now. I think a lot of people are becoming insufferable. And we really need to be self-aware because we all contribute a little bit to it. Dustin, what do you think?
I think that it's okay that there are sometimes rants on sacred symbols. I mean, isn't that why you're listening? Is to hear the passionate and thought out opinions of the hosts? Sometimes that might be negative. Sometimes it might be positive. But the point of, at least, I don't know, people listen for different reasons, but I hope that part of the point is that our analysis and criticism can help you draw your own conclusions, or at least stimulate some thought going on, you know? I'm not saying that there's no thought going on, but but that's the point, is that we say things and maybe can give you a different perspective on things so you can form your own opinion. And I know that for some people that it works in a negative way, that it's like, well, I heard this negative thing about a game that I was excited for, and now I can't be excited anymore. And
why not?
Yeah, why not? And that's the thing.
Or is everyone power picks to you like they are to me?
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to look at a game and think about what it looks like to you. And I'm glad that Justin brought up Valkyrie Elysium, because I played the demo for that game before it came out. I got a very clear expectation of what I thought it was going to be and thought it was actually pretty awesome. Then the reviews came out and the reviews were really bad, but I knew what I played or what I was interested in, and I played it and it was good. I was able to form my own opinion around that game that was, it had a lot of negative aspects, but if I didn't like it, I wasn't going to play it. But yeah, I don't know. This is interesting. Colin, I think you're talking about like people internalizing or taking things too seriously. And I think that that's part of it too, is that, I mean, maybe it makes sense for our hobby in that a lot of people make gaming their identity. And I think the three of us have to some degree, and that's okay. You can make the things you like part of your identity, but you can't make it wholly your identity, where if someone doesn't like the thing that you like, that it's a personal affront anymore.
Right. I don't make my love of games about what other people think about games.
Right.
That doesn't even make any sense. So I totally agree with you. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make. And it's not just to Justin, because I don't know if he feels this way about himself or whatever, but he says, because of his stance and not looking at reviews and stuff, he has thoroughly enjoyed games such as Sonic Frontiers, etc. Well, again, I ask you, if you read a negative review of Sonic Frontiers, why can't you detach that from your experience with Sonic Frontiers? I don't understand that. That's very weird to me. Like, people have to shake themselves of this notion. I think that's why people think, Chris, I've said this before, right, in the past. I had an ex-girlfriend who you knew, and she would say to me once in a while, like, you yelled at me about this, or you screamed at me about this, right, when we were fighting about something or arguing about something. And I'm like, you damn well know I didn't yell or scream about anything. Like, that's not who I am. That's not me saying something that you don't want to hear or don't like doesn't mean I'm yelling at you or screaming at you. And you're classifying it or saying it like and delivered in such a way that it's not. So when I hear people saying like Colin is ranting and raving on the podcast, I'm like, did you listen to it? I'm talking exactly the way I'm talking right now. It's just that people don't want to hear things sometimes, and I don't understand why you'd listen to this show if that was the way you felt. If you were so, if everything was so categorized in your life that everyone saying things really led you to feel a certain way, then I can't do much about that. And I just wish people were able to just absorb whatever and not let it bring them down. That's the big key. What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like it's a bigger conversation, because I feel like it kind of has tendrils in a lot of different spaces. But I do feel like, I don't know, generally, I mean, the internet just kind of works this way now as well. But like, negativity breeds conflict, and conflict breeds engagement. And that's just sort of, once you're clued into the fact that a lot of social media and a lot of algorithms are kind of built on getting you impassionately angry in order to keep you engaged for longer, it becomes a lot less aggravating to actually like read some of the shit that you're reading, because you just kind of like, oh, okay, I know why this is being shown to me, because the site knows that it will engage me, and the site knows that if I am to take the bait. I'm going to tweet about this, and then I'm going to get involved in some random fucking Twitter storm, and then I'm going to be on the app constantly, and I'm going to be advertised to. Once you're privy to that information, a lot of the negativity that you see, it does kind of wash, like it just sort of rolls off, because it's just like, oh, well, this isn't real. Like, people have to realize like what is and is not real. And I think like once you step into the real world, like I feel like you find that a lot of that negativity is kind of gone. At least like where we are. Maybe not in like, I don't know, some war torn, maybe not in like in the middle of Ukraine. It's probably pretty negative at the moment. But as far as like we're sitting, like when we're just like playing games in like first world countries, when we're just not really worried about anything like that, like people on the street aren't going to curse you out for disliking Forspoken, or for liking Forspoken, or whatever. It's like, it's a very different world when you're in person and outside, or even inside with a group of people in person. It's just like it's a completely different energy. So I would say, just, I don't know, man, just try to understand what the online aspect of all this is, and understand that it's mostly bullshit.
Agreed. And also, I'll just reiterate it, because I think people sometimes need to hear things they don't want to say. Just like, look at yourself. And again, I'm not saying this to you, Justin. I'm saying this to all of us. One of the big things about getting off of social media for me and just not engaging in it anymore is just how much the derivative shit you just described is removed completely. If I don't say anything, that removes this entire subset of things I never have to deal with again. And I haven't had to deal with in a long time now. And all it requires you is to not take the bait. That's true. But I also encourage people to kind of calibrate what they think the bait is. And if you think this show is the bait, I think you're sadly mistaken. I think that, look at the way you guys talk to each other in YouTube comments. Look at the way you guys talk to each other on social media. A lot of you, people say horrible shit to me all the time. My favorite passive aggressive thing on Twitter is to just remove myself from all those conversations now. I just love it. Just don't even respond. Just literally remove myself from them, so I'm no longer part of it. It's like you can pick and choose, but try not to mistake that stuff for what is really happening. I really encourage people to listen to, especially this show and others, for what it is. And then you are responsible for your reaction. Like, someone can come up to you and say, fuck you, right? This is going to be good for Lockmort. Someone can come up to you and say, fuck you, but you can just walk away. You can let that ruin your day. You might think it's unfair. It probably was. It was rude. You could say something back and engage and go down that whole path. Or you can realize that you kind of get back what you put out. And when you don't get what you're putting out, just ignore it and move on. And understand that if I say something I don't like something, it's not an affront to you. But I think most of you, it's to Chris's point, I think most of you totally understand that. And we're letting things get hijacked by people who don't understand it, who are just loud and boisterous and annoying. So if we just don't be, it's kind of how I feel about racism. Let's just not be racist. And then ultimately, we can remove that. Why can't we just all be pleasant? Why can't we all be kind? I don't know. A lot of questions here. But nonetheless, Justin, thank you for the thought-provoking inquiry. Led Bundy wrote in. Said, gentlemen, I've been dating my girlfriend for about 1.58 years now. We're dealing with a little bit of autism. And she is always claiming that she hates video games. She has been saying this since we started dating, but I always found it strange because she's actually pretty good at playing most games. We played through all of It Takes Two together, and she was awesome at it. Anytime we play racing games, she kicks my ass. She says she used to play Halo and Call of Duty back in the day, and now she plays some Guitar Hero type games on her phone. It is clear that
Clone Hero, I think.
What is it?
That's a Clone Hero.
Clone Hero, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see the speed runs. That's what people use that. It is clear that she does not actually hate video games, but if anyone mentions them, she is quick to voice her disdain. Recently, I asked her if she had experienced some traumatic video game related event that has resulted in all this haterade, and sure enough, this was the case. Apparently, she once dated a guy that played World of Warcraft for like 22 hours a day, which I guess wasn't a turn on for her. This guy even canceled their Valentine's Day plans so they could stay home and she could watch him play World of Warcraft. In addition, I work with a woman who was recently neglected by a guy she was talking to because of video games. I even heard her cry, quote, "Aren't there any decent men left in the world that don't play video games?" End quote. No. So I have two questions for you guys. Have you ever known someone who claims they hate video games? And are there a few awkward WoW nerds out there ruining everything for the rest of us that are actually capable of balancing a full life of gaming and loving? Thank you, Led, for writing in. One of these people is my sister, Dana, who comes up on the show sometimes. My sister, Dana, so I have two sisters. My sister, Dana, hates video games. Like just won't abide by them for some reason. Just can't. I can't. And what's interesting about her and annoying to me about it is that she's a high school teacher. She teaches AP literature, AP English, those like kinds of things. And she's really into read. She reads constantly. She's very well learned and worldly. And I try to just like I try to sit with her and be like, can I just show you this, or don't you understand this? And she's just like, nope. Just turns off. And what's even more interesting about that is that she has 3 boys, my 3 nephews, that are hardcore gamers. I bought them their PS3. I bought them their PS4. I bought them their PS5. I bought them their Switch. I didn't buy them something, and you see something's missing in there. Uncle Colin doesn't have all, it can't just be spending money on all this stuff. But I've been very much ingratiated video games into their lives, and it's very much a part of their lives. They're huge nerds, all of them. And but she's still, I get into this kind of fake argument with her because she won't let them play on weekdays. And I'm like, what is the difference between them playing a video game and being on their fucking phone? What is the difference even between reading a book and playing Gone Home? And there are some people that no matter how smart they are and how smart I know they are, I cannot shake them out of that stubborn stance. And if me being her brother and exposing her to this as much as I can, and my brother and even my sister Allie, who loves games, she's amped up about new Pikmin and all this. We just can't get through. And there are people in my family that I think care, like my mom cares. And she was especially enthralled by Death Stranding, actually. And then my dad, I try to sit, my dad comes and visits, asks what's going on. I try to sit him down. I know it's going in one ear and out the other. I know he has no idea what's going on. But I try 100%. To sit down and show him. I'm like, I think I showed him games like, you know what I showed him? I showed him Slay the Spire. And I was like, if you just sat and listened and understood this, I think you would really like it. But he's looking at the screen, he's engaging with me in conversation, but I just know he's not getting it. So which is frustrating in another way for me. But generally speaking, I just think that you can't it's what you said earlier, Dustin. People identify with video games as like a lifestyle choice. And I just think that that's a mistake. If you play games, and even if you play games a lot like we do, I don't think that necessarily has to be a part of your persona. And on the other end of it, hating video games is just as lame and vapid, in my opinion. Oh, I hate video games. Oh, do you hate art? You hate books? You hate music? You sound like a fucking idiot. If someone said, like, when someone literally just says that out of pocket, you sound like a fucking idiot. And like you sound like you don't know what you're even talking about. You sound like you're clueless, like you haven't paid attention for 40 years. Anyway, I'm going on a diatribe. Chris, let's go to you first. What do you think about this? The claims of hating video games and maybe the potential of a few people ruining it for everyone. And what are your experiences, if any, encountering folks like this?
I don't know. I feel like I've never met anybody who's been like, I hate video games. I feel like so many people that I know, like just by the nature of, the friends that I've made and just the job that I do, like most of the people that I know, if not all of them, play video games in some way. Like most of the people that I've dated have played video games, like if not all of them, I think literally every single one of them actually. Like whether it be like, sometimes it's Witcher, sometimes it's Pikmin and Animal Crossing, sometimes it's Assassin's Creed. I dated this one girl in college who was like big into Assassin's Creed. So like it's never, I don't know. I've never met anybody who really hated video games. I know people who don't understand them for sure. Like I think my mom is one of those people. She doesn't necessarily understand it. My dad gets it a little bit more, but he's still not really like. I remember he tried a long time ago to play Medal of Honor with me, and he couldn't grasp it. Like there's something about the sticks like that is a really huge barrier. And we've talked about this on the show before. Like the sticks are like a huge barrier.
Huge. I
feel like if you're introducing people to video games, and by the way, I was like, I don't know, 9, so I wasn't thinking about this necessarily, but you probably want to start with something that's 2D, but at the same time, like there's people who are old enough to not really understand video games are probably not going to be sucked in by something that's just 2D. So it's like, it's frustrating a little bit because my dad is super into Red Dead Redemption 2. Like when I played it in the living room, like he was totally locked into it. And I knew he would be because he's into that cowboy stuff, very into Westerns. So I was like, Dad, I think this is really, and I was trying to point out different things to him. Like look at how the snow moves with me. And like, isn't this cool? Like it feels like a movie. And he's like, yeah, it's like a feature film or something. So if I'm like, hey Dad, you should learn how to play video games, and then I put him on Red Dead, he's gonna be lost. He's gonna be clueless. And then I'm gonna be like, hey Dad, start on Tetris or start on like Mario, he's gonna be like, I don't give a shit about this. So it's frustrating to have
Indeed.
that clear interest, but no real way to make that jump. I don't know, but like my aunt used to play video games with me, my cousins, my friends and girlfriends. It's always been. I've never met a single person who said I hate video games. That sounds insane.
Yeah, and
that is like saying I hate, because it's not even just like saying like, oh, I'm not big on country or something.
Right.
That's like a genre. It's like the entire premise of the medium.
Right. It's like people that, and frankly, it's like people that say I don't like sports. Like, you don't like sports? You don't like any athletic activity. There's nothing that appeals to you about any of it. Not one single event is of any, and you just hate it. Okay, I think that's fucking weird.
I don't. Yeah,
personally.
I
do. I do. I
sports.
think that's weird. In fact, I love pretty much all sports in some way. You know, just like I love all music in some way. When people are like, "What kind of music don't you like?" I'm like, I don't know. I'll listen to anything. You see me, I'm listening to fucking Gregorian chants down there working out sometimes, nonetheless. Whatever the hell else is going on.
I think, yeah, I mean, sports, I've never been big on sports. I specifically never understood sports games, because like to me, it's just like, just go play.
Right. But do you
Like,
hate sports? Do you
No, I
just,
don't
do you
hate
just, do you
sports.
just like be like, you're boxing.
Yeah, exactly. So like I have some interest in
Right,
sports. Clearly.
exactly.
Like even if it's very cursory and very like self-serving. Like the only reason I'm into boxing right now is literally just because I feel like it's just a really healthy way to work out. And also I have this obligation thing that I was totally into doing anyway. But I wouldn't say that outside of watching boxing just to study, I don't know if I'd really sit down, like if there's like a fight that's happening, I'm not tuning into it like live, or if there's like a Yankee game or like a Jets game or like a Giants game or like, oh, the what is the tennis thing? The Open?
Yeah, the Wimbledon Open, the Wimbledon.
Yeah, the Wimbledon Open,
or the
like
US
all that
Open,
stuff,
US Open.
Yeah, the US Open, the World Cup. Like I've never cared at all about them, but like that's indifference. That's not like hate.
Right. I think that's totally. Dustin, you have something to say?
I'm the same way with sports in that I have tried to enjoy sports. I played on the ultimate frisbee team in high school. We were terrible. And there's like a small period of my life where I checked out football, but I don't know. I don't hate them. I respect them actually, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't find any pleasure there.
Yeah.
Do you guys know
enough.
that Frisbee is a brand name?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't make the best disc.
I didn't know that until recently. I always thought it was like I had a Band-Aid moment
Yeah.
with Frisbee recently, where it's like, I thought they were just called Frisbees. Like, no, they're called flying discs.
Yeah, flying
I'm
discs,
like, what the fuck? That's so stupid.
Yeah.
So
That's insane.
here's what I'll say about the hating games conversation is that it seems like in this write-in's experiences that it is a case of someone, they had bad experiences with people who abused games, but you can abuse anything like that. Like you could theoretically, you could be too obsessed with sports and be like, hey, you're going to come over and watch sports with me instead of do anything that you want to do. And that's all we're ever going to do because I'm obsessed with this singular thing. All we're going to do is watch this type of movie, and I'm going to do that all the time. And then it's funny too, Colin, you talked about your sister not letting their kids play games on weeknights. I'm like, do you let them watch TV?
Right. It's exactly right. It's totally that to me was like the most staunch experience one of my most staunch experiences where I'm like, what are you doing? This doesn't even make any sense. Like what you're doing doesn't make any sense, and you won't even listen to me about it. Like why it won't make any sense. So I've had those encounters before, but I think a lot of people arbitrarily just, I don't know, they hate on it. But then you also have to ask, like, Led, you say your girlfriend with her ex, it's like, why didn't she just leave? That's called neglect. And it's, as Dustin said, that could happen for alcohol or sports or another woman or any other reason. It's almost embarrassing to let it happen to games. It's happening like right under your nose. That's a little agency. You got to, Mass Effect like agency. You can express it to her like that. Tell her, imagine if you were playing Mass Effect, what choice would you have made here? And she'll totally understand what you mean. All right. Thanks for writing in. Luis Acevedo. I hope I'm doing that right. Says, what's up, my dudes? Is that right?
Yeah, Acevedo. Yeah.
Acevedo. Yeah,
Both of them are fine.
I want to bring about a question. I want to bring about a question about the term JRPG and how some Japanese developers actually see the term as derogatory and insulting. During the recent preview cycle of Final Fantasy XVI, game director Yoshi P acknowledged his displeasure with the term JRPG, saying that it puts Japanese-made role-playing games into a box, and they felt like they were being made fun of for creating these kinds of games. What do you guys think of his comments and the conversation surrounding it online, especially considering friend of the show Gene Park showcased additional anti-Asian sentiment prominent throughout the PS3 era? On a side note, I've been listening to the podcast since day one, even though I was a freeloader for the longest time. Keep up the great work, everyone. Dawson, I'm curious, what do you make of this? So I'm trying to stay far away from the Final Fantasy 16 preview cycle. People have gone to Square Enix in Japan and played it. They have direct feed and all of the rest and previews, written previews. I have no interest in seeing any of this. I've seen some stories kind of coming out talking about side quests and all the rest. We did discuss that. I did see one news item that there are 12 hours worth of cutscenes in the game, which is very appealing to me. I think that sounds amazing. That indicates that the game's probably going to be huge, which is so cool. And the story sounds so cool. But this was the thing that I saw people writing about that was taken away, that they actually look at the term JRPG as a little bit of a box and maybe even as an insult. And I actually understand what they mean, because I do think some people use that term as an insult, or at least as a reductive way to dismiss something. But I must say, as a person who's been playing Japanese role-playing games for 30 something years, I use it as a term of endearment. And when something is some of the greatest games of all time are JRPGs. When you are a true JRPG, when you nail the JRPG, you are nailing amongst the very finest games. And so I understand what he's saying, but I don't see it like that. I'm wondering what you think about this discourse.
I'm not really sure what to think, because in some ways I feel that when something, you can tell that a game, when you say JRPG, you have very specific things in mind on what that means, right? The way that it looks, the way the different, what type of adventure they're going to go on. It's not necessarily like set in stone, but traditionally you know what it means. And so if someone says they don't like JRPGs or they hate JRPGs, I can kind of understand that, being that we all can kind of have a general consensus on what that means. Now, maybe we are entering a new era where we have Japanese developers that are making RPGs that don't fit into that JRPG mold. And that makes sense to me, that maybe they wouldn't want to feel like they are associated with what our preconceived notions are. So I understand it, but I also I can understand feeling like you're put into a box by that term. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is kind of what we've come to know and expect from this definition. Like when you say a Western RPG, it kind of fits the same mold. And I'm with you, Colin, where I'm way less interested in Western JRPGs than I am JRPGs. Like, that's more my style, what I'm into. So I don't know. This is a tough one, and it's one that I feel like I need to spend more time listening than giving an opinion on, just because I'm not the person that can decide whether or not I would feel offended by this.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me that I have a problem with this actually is the source itself. And I'll present this to you, Chris, as we ask for your opinion. Eurogamer and others reported on this, and this comes from SkillUp, actually, who went and did a YouTube video when he was over in Japan and talked to Yoshi P. And it says, well, here's what Eurogamer says. In an interview with SkillUp and following previews of the game, Yoshida was asked about how JRPGs have advanced in comparison to action games. According to the interviewer, Yoshida was visibly uncomfortable with the phrase. And then here's what he said, quote, one thing Yoshida wants, and this was through Koji Fox, who's translating, quote, one thing Yoshida wants to get across is that when we create games, we don't go into them thinking we are creating JRPGs. We are just creating RPGs. The term JRPG is used by Western media rather than users and media in Japan. And then he goes on, this is going to depend on who you ask, but there was a time when this term first appeared 15 years ago. And for us as developers, the first time we heard it, it was like a discriminatory term, as though we were being made fun of for creating these games. And so for some developers, the term JRPG could be something that will maybe trigger bad feelings because of what it was in the past. It wasn't a compliment to a lot of developers in Japan. We understand that recently JRPG has better connotations and it's being used as a positive, but we still remember the time when it was being used as a negative. I remember seeing something 15 years ago, which was basically a definition of what a JRPG was versus a Western RPG. And it's kind of like Final Fantasy VII. And it has this type of graphics and this length of story and compartmentalizing what we were creating into a JRPG box and taking offense to that because that's not how we were going into creating. We were going into creating an RPG, but to be compartmentalized, that felt discriminatory. And he goes on, traveling around the world, speaking with fans and media about the image of the franchise, they would always give the same answer, that it's turn-based, that it's anime-like, these teenagers saving the world, very JRPG. This was the image for all Final Fantasy. This was turning off some players because they thought it could only be that and not a reason not to get into it. So he's going into a different direction here, but I want to say he's totally wrong about where the term comes from. And I actually saw Jeff Grubb, who's a journalist, write about this, where he's like, the term JRPG has steadily increased in use since 2008 and was in use well before that. And I agree. And he's talking about kind of the increase in use, but JRPG is a term, if not from the 80s, most certainly from the 90s, that was being used with rampant regard, beginning in the SNES era, certainly, but even in hindsight, talking about games like Dragon Warrior / Dragon Quest and other games we would get on there. So it doesn't come from 15 years ago. It comes from way longer ago in that. And what I think he's recalling is when the negative connotation began, which was about 15 years ago. And that was because there were a lot of really bad Japanese role-playing games coming out. Not JRPGs per se, but literally Japanese-made role-playing games. And it's why we call our upcoming game that, I don't know when it's going to come out, but the role-playing game we're working on is a Japanese style, or we're saying JSRPG. Because we all know what that inherently means. And I just I appreciate his cultural connection, which is far deeper and more intimate and more real than mine is to Japan, but we don't mean it as an insult. Chris, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I don't know. It's JRPGs are not my forte, like they're not my wheelhouse. So I don't really have tons of experience with them. The most experience I really have with them is the key tentpole titles, if that, like Final Fantasy VII and a couple of other. I think I played a little bit of. There was one on the 360. What the hell was it? Blue Dragon. I played a little bit of Blue Dragon. So it's like I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I do know the connotation that JRPG did have 15 years ago, because I remember getting into games around that time, or like getting really into games around that time, and feeling like that was not something that I wanted. It was not something that I was into. It didn't sell me particularly well, even with all the great examples from the past, obviously Final Fantasy and Legend of Dragoon and all these other things, but like Wild Arms, what have you. It's, I don't know. I feel like he's in such a unique position to state his case because he has such a unique connection to the term and what it means and how it influences like development, or like how it influences the people, like, I guess, in charge of making these games. So I'm not in a position to necessarily like argue with him, but I don't agree that it's inherently a negative thing, or that it's just a descriptor. I do understand what he's saying, though, in the sense that you have JRPGs and then you have RPGs, and it's like, well, why aren't JRPGs just RPGs?
Right, and this is
like that makes sense to me.
Well, this is
like I hear that.
I saw someone comment on this on Twitter where they were saying something along the lines of the difference between a modern JRPG can typically not be very high quality. Because he was saying, or she, I don't know who it was, why isn't Dark Souls a JRPG? Why isn't Bloodborne a JRPG? Or Elden Ring? Because they're Japanese role-playing games. I mean, they are literally Japanese role-playing games. And their argument, I think, is there is kind of this connotation that it's anime. This connotation that it's maybe kind of trash. Or cringy. Or whatever. And I get that because that's probably accurate. But even when I say something, and I'm going to continue, I don't, Yoshi P is one man with one opinion. I'm going to continue to describe things as Japanese because we all know what that means. And sometimes, like when you describe something as American, that can be really negative.
Yeah.
It could also be really positive. Totally depends. So when I say something is Japanese, we're going to have to talk about it from the connotation of what I mean it by. If it's just like I used the term a few weeks ago, even about Atomic Heart, Eurojank. Right? Like that's we all know what that means. We're not insulting Europe, Eastern Europeans. It's just a term of art. It's just, it doesn't, I think that I get it, but I think he's thinking too much about it because I do think he's ignoring that it actually is used complementarily, and that the 15-year ago era he's talking about is the era of like hyperdimension Neptunia and shit like that. Like, I think you need to open your fucking eyes a little bit as to what was happening with Japanese role-playing games at the time to understand that the negative connotation wasn't because they were Japanese, but because they were bad.
Yeah.
These are two different things. So Final Fantasy 16 is probably going to be a very Western style role-playing game out of Japan. And I don't think anyone's going to describe it as a JRPG, and maybe we'll have to. Do we need a better term? I think we need a better term for a lot of this stuff, but do we need a better term than Metroidvania? Yeah. We need a better term than Metroidvania. Yeah, I would say so.
It kind of goes back into the conversation about is Portal a first person shooter? Yeah. But no, also, like, it's not at all it's not at all a first person shooter. If you really get down to like what a standard FPS is, it's not, but it literally also is.
Right.
So it's one of those situations where we don't have a particularly good lexicon for describing these things. And, that shortcoming or that shorthand is bound to either mislead or, maybe overgeneralize or maybe even mischaracterize certain things. Like Elden Ring is a Japanese role-playing game, but it's not a JRPG. Why? I don't know, but it just is. It's not. It is a Japanese role-playing game, but it is not a JRPG, and we all know that. And I think that's kind of interesting. That is that intuitive, or that these types of terms are that not universally understood, obviously, but like definitely a lot more understood than I would have assumed that they would ever be. The fact that you could say that out loud, this is a Japanese role-playing game that is not a JRPG, is crazy. And for that to make perfect sense is, I don't know. Maybe we need better terms.
Well, is it coming down to semantics where it's like, should we call Persona an anime RPG? Like ARPG, even though that means action RPG.
Yeah, you can use that as action RPG. That's already taken. But
right.
Here's my thing. If Final Fantasy VI isn't a JRPG, what is it? I fucking dare you to tell me what Chrono Trigger is if it's not a JRPG. I dare you to tell me what that is. Right? So it means something. It absolutely means something. And until we come up with a broader or more widely defined term to deal with all these things, we have to deal with the inelegant shit, where we have some things that make a lot of sense, like first person shooter. But like Chris is saying, and I bring up Metroid Prime a lot, where this was a huge conversation at IGN. Is that actually a first person shooter? I say yes. But a lot of people say no. And it's about perspective. And this is the tough thing about it. And when you're describing something as complicated as JRPG, there's so much more to it than what he's describing. It's not only aesthetic, but I think it's being in the menus. I think it's a certain level of equipment and statistical depth. Now, you could find those things in other things, but we know what we're talking about. But at some point, people are going to arrive on the scene that have no idea what you're talking about. And for those people, we're going to have a better way to describe it. And I often think about that with video games, how lucky we are, and especially people my brother's age and maybe even a little bit older, if they've remained attached to video games the whole time, have been playing them in real time the entire time. So there is no catching up, and you will never get to catch up. It'll not be like being in the movies. Like there is going to be, you will never catch up with video games. And so you're going to have a lexicon to describe things more readily. And I get that. I totally get it. But in the meantime, we're stuck with roguelike, which is based on the game Rogue, Metroidvania, based on the game Metroid and Castlevania, like all these things that just even assume that you have any. A lot of people don't know what roguelike even fucking means because they don't know what rogue is. And I think they probably, and why would you? Because it's a game from 41 years ago that no one has played in years and years and years.
Yeah. And then there's roguelite and roguelike.
Right.
That's what I was about to say, Chris.
Which like I still to this day, look, man, I play a lot. I even like some of these games, right? I could not tell you what the fuck the difference is off the top of my head. I know it's probably like really obvious.
It's just depth, I think. For me, I would think a game like Rogue Legacy is a roguelite. And a game like Hades is roguelike.
Right.
In other words, Rogue Legacy is first and foremost a side-scrolling action game with roguelike features. Hades is a roguelike with action features. In my opinion. But I mean, then it's nonsensical.
You're right, but it sounds like a stroke. It sounds like an AI melting down.
I used to take the red orange crayon and the orange red crayon and put them together and be like, and look at them differently, and you could see that they were different, but you couldn't really describe it. Yeah, and it's kind of similar to this. I used to be obsessed with those two crayons. Because when I was a kid, 'cause I was like, why are there two, like one's more red and one's more orange? They're kind of the same. They're somewhat indistinguisable from each other.
This idea of child Colin like staring inquisitively at two fucking crayons.
Yeah. Trust me, I barely had 2 neurons probably firing at half my fucking childhood. All right.
Did you ever eat crayons?
I don't think so. I know what they taste like though, so I guess the answer is yes. I must have at some point. They taste the way they smell.
Oh no, it's really bad for those scented markers.
Oh, dude, I love those. The one with the little design, like the dude on them, and it's like licorice and strawberry and all. Oh, I loved those markers, dude.
It is. It's really funny though that we made markers that were specifically fun to smell.
Yeah. Bad.
Like that is amazing.
And they were explicitly non-toxic, but why wouldn't you start sniffing the Kingsford that also smelled really good?
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I loved Kingsford markers. If I could have gotten high on Kingsford, I knew better than to really get crazy with that stuff. But every time I saw one, I'd be like, and then just put the cap
just
back
a little
on.
bit, just a quick,
yeah,
a
little whiff.
quick hit.
It's like gasoline. Like, oh my God, dude, why does it have to smell so good? You got to do something to gas to make it smell bad. Because I literally just want to huff it. You know, we see we see Joel in The Last of Us fucking siphoning gas out. I was like, whoa, what a dream. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one, my friends. Travis Terry wrote in and said, hey, CDC, I found myself recently buying video games on release date and putting them in my queue of games to play. I sort of feel left out in a sense when I see people talking about all of the new games and how great they are, while me, I'm still grinding through Forbidden West. Do you guys focus on one game at a time before moving on to the next one? Thanks for all the great content and all that you do. I wanted to talk about this because I'm having a time right now where I'm trying to balance multiple games, and it's always a difficult time for me to do. I really like just playing one game at a time. But what I don't do, Travis, and it seems like what you do, is you keep a very linear path through your games. And this will mean that you never catch up, but I actually don't hate it. See, what I don't mind is that your list is literal, it's not figurative, so you're not writing these things down, you're buying them at full cost. If you're only getting the Forbidden West now, maybe not a great example, but if you're only getting the games a year after their release, why not just wait? Because you're going to get them all for cheaper. That's my only problem with your technique, although I appreciate you putting your money where your mouth is nonetheless. Dustin, talk to me about multiple games, one game at a time. It sounds like you're balancing a lot with PSVR 2. I guess that's a little bit different, but to me, I used to have it so that I'd have a Vita game going and a PS4 game or a PS5 game going at the same time. Back in the day, PS3. But now I really just try to keep it to one console game. And now that I'm playing Grim Guardians, I've given up on Hogwarts Legacy, but I'm playing Grim Guardians and then Horizon Call of the Mountain. I won't open up another game until I'm done with one of those because I'm like, this is too many open bottles. Like, you know, the Coke's getting flat. You know, I can't let that happen.
Yeah, that's my problem, is that I open too many bottles because I'm just too interested and intrigued by new games. And so, yeah, I often have this problem. It's gotten more of a problem as I've gotten older and have, I don't know, I have to balance my time better in that I want to play like 5 games at once, but I really shouldn't just because stuff falls by the wayside. Like, for example, I was really into Fire Emblem Engage, and eventually I was just starting to not enjoy it as much. Like I was getting burnt out on it. And so I've concluded, I'm like, okay, I just got to put this away. And I really hope I come back and finish it because particularly Holly's playing it right now. And she says it's awesome. Like you get the story really picks up. So I got to put that away, but I'm still playing Hogwarts Legacy. But you start to get a feeling with some of these long games that it's like, all right, let's go. Like I probably need to start mainlining this now because I'm getting this weird feeling of like, I've been playing this too long and I'm getting interested in other stuff. And I just need to finish this so I can move on. I know there's side stuff. I can always come back and do that later. That's the thing I always got to tell myself is like, if you like it, finish it, and then you can come back to it later. So yeah, I've never been a one game type of guy. I've always had the opposite problem.
One hit quit.
Yeah. So we'll see. Right now is a particularly bad situation with how many games I have going at once. So I need to start consolidating. VR is a little different though, because with some of these games, like GT7, I can just play a couple of races. With Tetris Effect, I can hop in, just play a little bit. Horizon and Village are, I don't know. Village I've already played. So if I just play a decent amount of it and then put it down, I'm not going to feel bad. right? But I do want to finish Call of the Mountain. Luckily, that's not too long either. So those are a little more bite sized. So those are nice to fit in, especially because of VR. You're not going to play for 3 or 4 hours at a time. You only probably want to be in there for much shorter sessions. So those are easier to fit in alongside other games.
I agree with you there. I want to try to just get one game going on VR at a time, assuming I'm even going to fuck with it. Because if I can't find the sweet spot, then I have to assume either the device is broken or I have or I just can't do it. And that's what's frustrating about being the only person that has this fucking thing around me. It's probably no one within 10 miles of me that has a fucking PSVR 2, so I can't even test it out. But Chris, let's hear from you, my friend. How many games at once are too many games at once? You seem to jump around a lot. I would imagine I finished the most games. Do you guys think that would be inaccurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How many? Didn't you have a list on how many you finished last year?
Yeah, probably. Well, I can just look on PSN profiles. Let's see. But yeah, go on, Chris. I'll look this up in the meantime.
No, yeah. I mean, I jump around a lot. I think it's, I don't know, man. It might be an ADHD thing, but like I jump around a lot. Like right now, there was a period of time where I was playing Prey, Dishonored 2, and like a number of other things at once. I got back into Red Dead 2 again recently. In the last like month or two, played through a little bit of that. Been playing through BioShock again, just on a whim. Oftentimes I'll try and juggle a lot of things at once, and then like nothing will stick. Like maybe I want to play this, and I'll play it for a little bit, and it's like, nah, this isn't it. And I'll try something else. It's like maybe this is it. It's like no, this isn't working either. And then inevitably I will just go into one of my old reliables, which is like one of the Halo games, one of the Gears games, or BioShock or something. Something that I've played already that I know really, really intuitively and really, really well, that I know that I can kind of shut my brain off and kind of think about other things while I'm playing it. And it means that the games that I really love, I know a lot about, and I'm really, really well versed in them, and I can discuss them at length. But it means I finish way fewer games than most people, I would imagine, because I'm just jumping around so often. Even games that I really, really like I was playing Dead Space Remake and Hi-Fi Rush around the same time. And, I was deep into Dead Space Remake by the time Hi-Fi Rush came out, but I was like, ooh, I really want to try this. And then I played it, and I was like, this is really, really great, but I got to get back to Dead Space. And then I finished Dead Space, and then something else was out, and I was like, oh, I got to go to that. And then so I haven't finished Hi-Fi Rush yet because I haven't felt that natural way to pull myself back in. So, I mean, I try now to kind of keep it at one game at a time as best I can. I tried it with Atomic Heart, where I was like, Atomic Heart's going to be the one game that I'm going to go for. And I got as far into that game as I could stand. And I'm finished with that game as far as I'm concerned. So now I can move on. Destiny's kind of always going on in the background. That's the live service thing. That's what I'm talking about. This is like the foundational kind of come back to regularly kind of game. But I don't know. I think next I'm probably going to try and finish Hi-Fi Rush because I feel like I'm really close to the end of it. And then when I'm done with that, I'll figure out what I want to do. But I'm trying to keep myself to one game at any given time. That isn't Destiny, because that's like, again, that's just extra stuff.
That's a job.
Yeah. It's a nice unpaid job.
Well, Dustin,
that
for
I
me,
pay for.
I'll give you a little bit of an idea here. Let's take a minute. But
yeah,
since
I have my count.
Okay, so I'll count this out as I go. Since January of last year, I'll start. Okay. I beat Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit, and Wonder Labyrinth. I abandoned Persona 4 Golden at the very end. I abandoned Mercenaries Rebirth at the very end. I beat and platinumed Far Cry 6. I beat and platinumed Doki Doki Literature Club. I abandoned Infernax. I beat and platinumed Horizon Forbidden West. I abandoned Elden Ring. I beat and platinumed Ghostwire Tokyo. I beat Nobody Saves the World. Scroll up. Sorry. I abandoned Lego Star Wars. Castlevania Advanced Collection, I won't even count that because those are different games. I beat Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I beat Super Perils of Baking. I abandoned SnowRunner. I beat Shredder's Revenge. I beat The Quarry. I beat Wild Arms. I abandoned Stray. I abandoned Gravity Rush. I beat and platinumed Cyberpunk. I beat Deathloop. I beat and platinumed The Last of Us Part 1. I abandoned Metro Exodus. I abandoned Tunic. Slay the Spire, I don't think you can really beat. The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel, I beat. Shatter, I beat. Tactics Ogre Reborn, I abandoned. God of War Ragnarok, I platinumed and beat. Crisis Core, I beat. Chained Echoes, I abandoned. Callisto Protocol, I beat. Evil West, I beat. Platinumed both of those. Uncharted 4, I also beat. Dead Space, I beat and platinumed. Hogwarts Legacy, I abandoned. So that shows 22 finished games and 13 abandoned ones last year. How's that compared to you?
I have this list where I put every game that I played last year, and I put a check mark if I either totally finished, saw the credits, or if it's a game where you don't really finish that I feel like I put in a sufficient amount of time. My count of check mark games are either 29 or 30.
Wow,
I counted twice.
And that's for the year.
Yes.
Yeah, so I even added more than 1 year. So you're beating me there.
Yeah. I have 50 games that I played, but some of them, and to be clear, there are games that I
played. Yeah, good.
The 50 does not include a game that I played for half an hour. It has to be some level of time. Like, for example, a game that I have on here that I played, but I didn't check mark is like Live Alive. I played that for probably 4 or 5 hours. I did not beat it. Something like the JoJo fighting game. I didn't check mark that.
Gotcha. Out of the 22 games I beat, I platinumed 12 of them. Substantial period of time to spend on each of those, but very complete. Very complete nonetheless. There were some games I abandoned. I was annoying Chris because I abandoned Tunic literally right at the end. And with Persona 4, I just didn't do the last dungeon because I was so disenchanted with missing a social link.
That's the thing that I can't fathom. Like, if I'm that close to the end, I have to finish it at that point because it's just like, well, why not?
I literally thought I was going to cry when I found that out about Persona 4. Like, I literally thought I was going to cry. It was like so much time.
Yeah, no,
I'm a fucking baby.
The thing is, like, I rarely get that deep into a game at all. Like, usually I'll, like, in the first 30 minutes to an hour, I'm like, I know generally, like, it's okay, this is not working for me. So I typically, like, I start a lot of games and then I just don't get that far in. But if I'm like 50% of the way through, I'm finishing that game just by sheer, like, I'm already this far.
Yeah. You're not touched in the head in the same way I am.
No, I'm touched in the head in a different way.
Yeah, in many different ways. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Blue Moose wrote in and said, "Greetings, Sacred Symbol studs. Do you ever see one of PlayStation Studios investing in creating a high quality AAA 3D platforming collectathon style game akin to Super Mario Odyssey? I'm a huge 3D platforming fan and feel there are very few high quality games made in this genre outside of Nintendo. A few indie developers have tried with things like Yooka-Laylee or A Hat in Time, but you can tell they have a limited budget with those games. I feel Astrobot would be the perfect IP to do it with, even Sackboy. Love all the amazing content and stay studly, my friends." Thank you, Blue Moose, for writing in. Dustin, need for a 3D platformer collectathon, high quality Super Mario Odyssey, very slick system seller. Possible, needed? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that they should do a sequel to the Astrobot Rescue Mission. Absolutely. I think that that's where they can really excel because they've already done one that was really
So you're
awesome.
talking about the Vita game, or I'm sorry, the PSVR game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get a sequel and do it in VR because I think it's hard for them to compete against Mario, even if they can make a game that's just as compelling and awesome, is that it doesn't necessarily have that IP behind it, which drives a lot of sales. And you can see that with, I don't know, it seemed like Sackboy, as much as how cool he is and how cute he is, he just never had anywhere close to like a Mario level, appeal to him at all. So I think that the way that they can really get something awesome going is in the VR space. So please, another Astrobot game. Maybe they could do it in a way that it could be both playable in VR and on.
I was going to say, I think that
and
they really need to figure that out. Like
Yeah.
if they, and I'll throw it over to you, Chris. I'm so seeing PSVR 2's very soft reception, which is obvious, and then that's about as good as it's probably going to get for PSVR 2 as far as it's chatter, unless some big games like Half-Life Alyx or some just big game comes out of nowhere that really kills, which is possible. So I'm loath to have them isolate anything of meaning there, which is sad, but this is the fucking catch-22 of having this unit to begin with. And I'm wondering if you think that there's a space for them to do a game like this. What's particularly interesting about it is that Nintendo's not even doing a game like this. So there is a little bit of appetite. I mean, wasn't Odyssey like in 2017? something
Yeah.
like
That
that.
was the Switch launch year.
Yeah, so
I believe.
2017. So it's been a long time since we've even gotten a Mario, like a proper 3D Mario game. So there could be an opening here, but I just don't know if that's what our fan base is looking for. What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like people say they like 3D collectathons, and then new ones come out and they don't sell unless they're Mario. Like I feel like it's one of those things where it's like I think I don't think those people are lying. I think they really do like Banjo-Kazooie, and I do think they really do like the 3D Mario games, and I do think they like I don't know, any number of like other old classic titles of the same vein. But I don't think people are really accepting of new titles in that genre as much as they like to think they are. Because as fun as that gameplay loop is, it is very heavily tied to your enjoyment of the IP. It's kind of like collectathons are kind of like theme parks, where the whole point is to kind of run around and explore. You run around and explore this world, but it's not a new world. It's a world you're kind of already familiar with. You go to like Nintendo Land because you're like, oh, I know Nintendo. I like Nintendo. Let me go to Nintendo Land and have fun running around and collecting all these weird things and like exploring all these weird locations and having weird food or whatever. Or Harry Potter World is a similar thing where it's like, oh, I like this world. Let me like run around and explore and like collect things, and you know what I mean. When it's like a new universe built around collecting things, like I feel like a lot of the magic's kind of gone. And I know that wasn't always the case. Obviously, like Mario had to start somewhere, and Banjo-Kazooie had to start somewhere, and all these titles had to start somewhere. But I also feel like that was just a very different time in games, and I love these games, but I can tell you also, I haven't played Yooka-Laylee.
Yeah, I haven't played Yooka-Laylee since it's come out. Yeah.
I haven't played A Hat in Time either. I've heard they're good.
A Hat in Time I have played. The funny thing about that is that it's I didn't get very far in it either time I played it. I actually downloaded it on my PS5 up here a few months ago to just fuck around with it. It reminds you, I'm like, no, this is what it is. This is a collectathon, and this is kind of a 3D mascot based game in some way. But Chris, it goes back to like we were talking about nomenclature and all of that. I even have a problem with calling Mario Odyssey a collectathon. This gets this. I'm like, I'm not sure that's a collectathon, and collectathon doesn't necessarily
there
mean
are 1,000 moons to collect.
Right, but to me, I think of a collectathon as being like Crackdown, where you're like collecting things on, or like dragonflies in a Spyro game, like where you're actively collecting things. You're not doing tasks necessarily, or I don't know. I dispute that term with this, and that goes into how he even describe. I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm just saying, to me, well, that's the point about Crackdown was collectathon is often associated with 3D mascot platformers, but I would say that that's not like where. In fact, I would argue Crackdown might be the most prolific collectathon ever when you really think about it. I mean, that's all anyone ever talked about with that game. It was almost like that was the entire point, you know?
Hogwarts is a collectathon in some ways.
What is?
Hogwarts Legacy.
Hogwarts, yeah. Oh, yeah, I would agree with that for sure, yeah.
Yeah, pages everywhere. You're getting the astronomy tables, the Merlin trials. I mean, you're not, I guess, collecting a single item, but, well, I mean, in the case of the pages, yeah, there's pages everywhere.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, well, as far as like 3D platformers with overworlds that are built around collecting, you know, like I feel like that's a genre that people like, but at the same time, it's like they don't really show up for it, and that makes me sad, because it reminds me a little bit of stealth, where it's like people are like, yeah, we want stealth, and then you know, believe me, there would be a lot of stealth games if people were fucking throwing money at it, you know.
Right.
You said, believe me, like, believe me, there'd be more stealth games if you showed up.
Believe me. Sam Fisher will return. He is my running mate. Sam Fisher and Donald Trump run for president. Jesus Christ.
Oh.
All right. Emmett writes in, this is something more I'm sharing with you guys, but we can talk about it a little bit. He says, hey, gentlemen, I wanted to tell you a story from a strange corner of the gaming world that you would otherwise never stumble upon. I play a lot of Final Fantasy XIV. It's been my MMO of choice for years. I have well over 2,000 hours in the game at this point, and I still adore it. I took a break a while ago to focus on planning my wedding, but I decided to jump back in and see what all my old friends were up to. I discovered that the members of my free company or guild had opened an in-game bar which operates like a real business. They sell drinks to other players in a role-play environment. They stream music via Twitch, which players can listen to through their browser. They have a strict work schedule, shift managers, accounting, etc. All in-game currency, by the way. When I logged into our Discord server, they were arguing about a particular player who kept calling out sick for his shift. They were debating whether or not to fire him. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was utterly bizarre. Anyway, since the three of you aren't into MMOs as absolute psychos like me, I figured you'd find this interesting to know about some of the weird shit that MMO players get up to. I love it, dude. I mean, this is, in some way, I don't want to say this is the power of games, because in my mind, the power of games is in what it represents to the individual. But for a lot of people, this is indeed the power of games. And I think that's great. I think it's super cool. It reminds me a lot of EVE Online and all the...
Yeah, I was about to say.
Right.
Wasn't there there was a whole thing about, there was a space battle in EVE Online that ended up costing like thousands of real world dollars or something.
It's
insane.
It's awesome. I love it. I love that kind of stuff that bleeds in, and this is like the shit people play. Like, this is their game of choice. This is what they resort to. I see some of them on my friends list on PSN. I'm just friends with a bunch of random people, and so I just see what they're playing. It's awesome, actually. It's a cool insight. It's probably, I don't know how scientific it is, but it does show me like, wow, a lot of people are liking this, or a lot of people pre-ordered this, or a lot of people are playing this right now, or I'm literally the only one out of 2,000 people playing this, like Grim Guardians, where it's like 0 players are playing this. But
Babylon's Fall.
Dustin, what do you think about this? Anything to say about this? Do you want to get a job at this bar in Final Fantasy 14? You were a bartender once.
I was a bartender once. I'm not sure about being, maybe an anime bartender. That might sound all right. But I love this because it reminds me, I've never participated, but I know in World of Warcraft, you could join specific servers that were RP servers, where the idea was that if you communicated with other characters, you communicated as your character. And that was like kind of the point, is that you really were trying to like live this experience in the game. And I think that's super cool. And it also goes in a totally different direction with like the GTA online RP stuff, where people have modified the game, where it's like, you need to go, your car needs maintenance, and there's different people, like you have to take it to a real person that their job is fixing cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. And dude, the amount of stuff in Grand Theft Auto Online, the RP stuff, is insane. I want to be into it. It just feels like a lifestyle. I too want to play too many other games.
It's one of those things. It's like that is the main aspect of Grand Theft Auto Online that really constantly is calling to me in some way, because I do feel like a role play, like a proper full on GTA 5 Grand Theft Auto Online role play server sounds like it could be so fucking fun, especially just to stream and
Definitely.
just to like, if we could get like a bunch of like people in the audience to like build like this ridiculous fake Los Santos, and we'd like go in there and like wreak havoc every now and again. I feel like that'd be so fun. But I don't know. It just seems like a daunting thing to get into as well. Just because like the last time I played GTA Online, it was nowhere near as robust as it is now, and I remember being overwhelmed as fuck. Like back then. So like I can't even imagine. I remember having to pay car insurance in that game, and I was like, no, dude, I don't even know what's happening. This is way different.
Yeah, it's cool that there's like different layers to it and levels to it. Very Second Life like. And I think I've recommended it in the past. I don't remember what it was called. Let me look it up real quick. There's a great documentary from maybe 10 or more years ago, Second Life documentary about Second Life, and specifically these people that that I think it's Life 2.0, and it's from 2010, and it's so interesting because it's really, Second Life gets a lot of shit, and I think reasonably so, but it's really ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and as many things end up being as the years pass. And I remember that there was this one woman that made like a lot of money, and she was one of the focuses of the documentary. Like, she would make fake things to sell at like a clothes store in Second Life, but it would be real money, and she like lived on it. That's like what she did, and I was fascinated by it. People should go check it out. It's Life 2.0. I think it might be on Amazon Prime if you're interested. But I like that games can be whatever they want to be, and it's just like tabletop role playing and all the rest. I've even read things where there are like groups of people that get together and they role play the entire time they're together. Like, they don't break character at all. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like a more of a LARP kind of situation, I guess.
Yeah.
But
there's a documentary called Darkon.
Oh yeah, that's an oldie, man. That's a classic.
Dude, it's fucking awesome.
That's a classic. But I was reading one recently about how there was like a breakdown because like someone didn't like someone in the real world, but it shouldn't have mattered in the game, and it ended up fucking the entire game up for everyone, and everyone was like really mad about it. Pretty interesting stuff going on there.
Funny.
So I just like, they're not supposed to even acknowledge each other in the real world, basically, and then they come together in this fake game. Pretty interesting ideas out there, and gamify anything you want. I'm more power to you.
Yeah.
Not my kind of thing, certainly, but lightning bolt. All right. Let's get the hell out of here. Before we go, though, I want to just stitch this on the end. Reuters reports exclusive. Microsoft set to win EU nod on Activision with licensing offer, sources say. And it says, quote, Microsoft Corp is expected to secure EU antitrust approval for its $69 billion acquisition of Activision with its offer of licensing deals to rivals. Three people familiar with the matter said, helping it to clear a major hurdle. So we'll see what happens with this. The European Commission is scheduled to decide the deal by April 25th. And it looks like with some concessions, it will go through, at least in Europe. So we'll have more to say about that in the coming weeks. Just wanted to make sure we didn't end without saying that. Now we can end. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
Man, I just I hope that this means we won't have several more months of talking about this. That is my main excitement. But anything else? I don't know. I'm gonna dive a little bit more into Destiny 2 because I'm trying to figure out, like, I want to flesh out how I feel about it. See what the rest of it has in store. But that's really it.
How about you, Dustin?
Just thanks everybody for coming out to the Houston show.
Yeah.
Just because I know that the investment for some people is really high. In fact, I think at one point during the show, we asked who was from out of town, and it was like most people there. I understand, like, flying and hotels, all that stuff really adds up, and it means a lot. We appreciate you. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. And we're happy to do those types of events. It's very cool. If you listen to Constellation, we talked about how it's a huge morale boost for us, and we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Well said. We appreciate all of you out there. We'll see you on Patreon, free feeds, of course, Discord, and all the rest. Couldn't do it without you, like Dustin said. And I will say this. It was good to see all of you in person, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in person again real soon. Until then, my friends, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.